Welcome to Newsroom. We're coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. I'm Shante Yankees, and of course, standing by with your sporting news is a birthday boy or birthday man, Kendall Makamata. You good, Kendall?
No, very good. Thank you very much. Letting the cat out of the bag on Twitter and right here as well.
Happy birthday to Kendall. Thank you for coming into work today.
Yeah, I kind of had to.
Let's have a look at our question of the day. We're asking you, what do you make of former acting CEO Machela Koko and former CFO Anoj Singh's testimonies at the Eskom inquiry? Send us your comments on @SABC Newsroom. Make sure you include those hashtags Koko, Singh and Eskom. Well, Jennifer says the truth will prevail. They are both blatantly lying on national TV, even though there is hard evidence to prove that they are or were involved with the Guptas.
Worse than that, they're actually lying in Parliament. And Petra Simana says they've opened holes in the narrative of the state capture. The authenticity of the Gupta leaks is now coming under fire, reckons Petra.
Definitely, and more people under fire is who should be held accountable for the Life Ezra Meni tragedy. This is our poll today. Well, first up, we have Dr. Barney Salabana. Of course, he's the HOD. 15% of you saying he should be held accountable. Overwhelming 53% MEC Kudani Mahlangu.
13% reckon it's the Premier, David Makura, and Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the Minister of Health. He gets 19% of the 219 votes.
It's going to be very interesting. Of course, Mahlangu is saying that she did not make the decision by herself. It was a collective. So that's why we have some of these names. And let's have a look at the comments behind those numbers. Siafana says Kudani Mahlangu and the rest. Hashtag Mahlangu.
All right. And Memani says all of them, hey, because they all could have avoided this. So I blame all of them. That's according to Memani. They're all in that mix.
Keep those tweets coming in on both our poll and our question. Moving over to sport, what are we expecting?
Well, in sport, we're talking about Proteas, and we all know it's not a dead rubber happening out at the Wanderers. We want to find out from you, can the Proteas stick to their guns and whitewash India at the Wanderers? Let's see what you're saying on social media. I'm sure there are lots of comments on this.
Lechasa says, yes, I really trust the Proteas can do miracles. They've done it before. Can they do it again?
Oh, yes, we believe they can. Shabs comes in with Elga and Amla owe us big time. That they do. We're looking for a big score from one of those two. Hopefully both can stick around and set a platform for AB de Villiers and Faf to work from. Nice one, Shabs. Definitely
nice one, Shabs. So that being said, that is a wrap-up of your poll and your question for today. All your news and sports coming up. First up, let's have a look at your headlines. The terms of reference for the Commission of Inquiry into alleged estate capture will be published today by the Department of Justice. Former acting CEO and group executive for generation at Eskom, Machela Koko, says he will not settle for any fixed arrangement to get him out of his job. And Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says government has been slow in dealing with problems at Eskom despite repeated warnings. And Kendall is standing by, taking us through all of our sporting highlights this Thursday morning. Kendall, what are we looking forward to this Thursday morning?
First up, we're going to be looking at what's happening out at the Wanderers. Cricket is on the go. Proteas look to be coming good of that promise that they are going to beat the #1 test side in the world. But we'll find out about that shortly. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
Oh, edged and gone.
More than a dead rubber, the third test against India offers South Africa an opportunity to add India to their list of whitewashed opponents.
That is the end of the Indian innings, and the South Africans plan has once again come together.
Ideal preparations for us for this particular team to try and build momentum with the Commonwealth Games in mind.
And Springbok Sevens coach Neil Powell plans to use the Sydney Sevens, which start on Friday, to measure the progress his team has made.
It's a match where you can close the gap or you can open the gap.
If you don't win, don't lose.
A humdinger of a PSL match looms this weekend, with Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns set to lock horns at the FNB Stadium. All this and more I've got for you later on. Do stay with Shante as she's got the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. Let's have a look at your top story at 9 o'clock. The Department of Justice will today publish the terms of reference for the Commission of Inquiry into alleged state capture. Well, this will pave the way for Deputy Justice Raymond Zondo to begin the proceedings of the Commission, expected to last for 6 months.
The State of Capture report dealt with allegations that the Gupta family was involved in the appointment of executives at state-owned enterprises, as well as various cabinet ministers. It also exposed the capture of the SOEs through the awarding of multi-billion rand tenders to the family. The Deputy Chief Justice made his first announcement as to how the State of Capture report is to be taken forward.
The Commission is still waiting for the terms of reference to be finalized. The Presidency, I think, is working on them.
Response by Presidency.
Signed the terms of reference, after which the Department of Justice is currently processing the publication thereof in the Government Gazette.
The scope is expected to be confined to the Public Protector's report. The alleged corruption has impacted negatively on the country's image. Deputy Cyril Ramaphosa is currently on a mission at the World Economic Forum, taking place in Davos, Switzerland, to dispel this perception. Montlengani Dipoko, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Bank of Baroda has reportedly agreed to share the bank details of the South African-based Gupta family. The bank has said the account records would provide evidence of a substantial contravention of the law. The Guptas have denied that their accounts were used for money laundering activities. Gupta-linked companies are facing allegations of state capture and misusing their close links with President Jacob Zuma. Our India correspondent Neha Punia reports.
India's Bank of Baroda is at the center of a massive corruption probe in South Africa. After 4 major South African banks closed the accounts of the Gupta family following allegations of money laundering, the Bank of Baroda was the last bank in the country that continued to work with the family. Civil society organizations in South Africa have also accused the bank of being deeply involved in state capture, a charge that the bank denies. The Gupta brothers are accused of using 1.75 billion rand of mine rehabilitation funds in their Bank of Baroda accounts to repay personal loans. The Guptas have denied all wrongdoing. Now facing the possibility of having its bank license revoked, the bank has agreed to disclose the financial accounts of the Guptas. Experts in India say Bank of Baroda may have breached rules about having significant exposure to one or more clients, and that Bank of Baroda being a government-owned bank, the calls have increased for the Indian government to act against it.
So essentially a bank is as good as the trust that it holds. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. After all, it holds everything that you have as an asset in terms of money. And any bank which goes through a round of pressure in order to reveal something that's going wrong is definitely not fulfilling its trust duty, if I may. And this is one of the oldest banks of India.
Bank of Baroda has given the Gupta family and their associates until March 21st to launch legal action to keep their banking records secret, a period that is 30 days beyond the time stipulated as per the law.
The Bank of Baroda has maintained the accounts of the Guptas in its South Africa branch since 2005. It saw 36 suspicious transactions worth 4.25 billion rand linked to the accounts of the Guptas between September 2016 and July 2017.
Last year, Treasurer General of the ruling ANC party in South Africa, Zweli Mkhize, said they'd welcome any kind of investigation.
If there's any information suggesting corruption or irregularities, it needs to be investigated across the borders. It does not need to be restricted to South Africa.
South Africa's opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, has also accused the Guptas of using their accounts with the Bank of Baroda to funnel South African public money out of the country, a charge that will be in the limelight when and if the account details are disclosed. Neha Punia, SABC News, New Delhi.
Eskom's beleaguered former CEO, Brian Molefe, will hear today if he must pack the back portion of the 30 million rand pension he allegedly received unlawfully. A full bench of the High Court in Pretoria will deliver judgment in an application by the Democratic Alliance and the trade union Solidarity for an order to set aside decisions relating to Molefer's early retirement payout and brief statement, as well as to force him to pay back over 11 million rand he had already received. Molefe opposed the application, insisting that he had never resigned and was entitled to return to his post. Well, SABC's Sipho Seman is at the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to give us all the details. Very good morning to you, Sipho. Essentially, what is likely to happen at the North Gauteng High Court in the Brian Molefe matter this morning?
Well, a very good morning to you and our viewers at home. Indeed, we are here at the Pretoria North Gauteng High Court, Court 4D, where we expect the judgment on the matter, Brian Molefe's reinstatement and the subsequent 30 million rands pension payout that he received, whether it was a lawful one. We know that the DA and Solidarity Union came here to this court to apply for the reinstatement to be declared unlawful and invalid, and for Brian Molefe to repay a portion of the money that is already received. We know that he's received about 11 million rands already, and the DA says that he was never entitled to that money and that this court should then ask him to repay that money. We also know that Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown has also said that she would abide by any court ruling, saying, which means then she did not oppose this application by the DA and Solidarity Union.
Now, why essentially is Solidarity contesting the matter?
Well, Solidarity, they're saying that Brian Molefe is making a mockery of the law. They're saying that he had resigned, of course, after that public protector state of capture report, which made a number of damning findings against Brian Molefe, that he had made a number of trips to Saxonwold, and that has made a number of calls to one of the Gupta family members. And you would remember Brian Molefe, of course, infamously said that he went to Saxonwold to a certain Shebeen. Hence, we now have the Saxonwold Shebeen that is doing the rounds of social media. So they're saying that after that, he did, of course, release a statement saying that he is resigning on the basis of good governance because of this cloud that's hanging over him. And we know that after that he went to Parliament for a short stint, and Eskom actually then advertised the post of CEO. So they are arguing then if the post was advertised, then surely that means that Brian Molefe then had resigned, but he's saying that he never resigned, but rather he took an early retirement, and so this should not be seen as a reinstatement. Brian Molefe's lawyers did argue here that this matter was very high on emotions and low on facts, saying that his client was entitled to coming back, that is Brian Molefe, coming back to resume his post as Eskom CEO. We now know, of course, soon after his reappointment, Minister Lynn Brown then fired him, and along with this court process, Brian Molefe then went to the Labour Court and to challenge that. But then the Labour Court then said that it was awaiting the outcome of this court in terms of whether his appointment is unlawful, and so he should pay back some of that money. So we shall, at 10 o'clock this morning, we're expecting the full bench then to give its judgment on the matter. But certainly it's a matter that has been in the public domain for quite some time. It was really quite a very bizarre sequence of events. You had Brian Molefe stating that he was stepping aside, then going to Parliament as an ANC MP, and then coming back, but subsequently being fired. So it was rather a chaotic and a messy affair, and hopefully this court will then clarify as to whether the actions to grant him that 30 million payout and that 11 million that is already received were lawful. But we must also remember that the inquiry by Parliament into Eskom called in the Eskom Pension Fund. And the Eskom Pension Fund then leaders said that actually, it was Brian Molefe was not supposed to have been a member of the pension fund because he was on a 5-year fixed-term contract and he was not a permanent employee, suggesting that Eskom then leaders and the board at the time misrepresented that is the status of Brian Molefe. So there's a lot of questions that are hanging over this matter, and we're hoping that the court is going to offer clarity when it delivers its judgment here at 10 o'clock.
Definitely. Thank you very much. That was our SABC reporter, Sipho Steeman, giving us the details into that judgment that will be handed down just past 10 o'clock this morning. Well, moving on, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says government realized it had to act quickly on Eskom when a preparatory meeting was held ahead of the World Economic Forum. Ramaphosa was speaking at the South African business dinner hosted by Brand South Africa on the sidelines of the WEF in Davos in Switzerland. The Deputy President continues to engage world leaders as well as business leaders in Davos. He is expected to address the World Economic Forum later today.
On arrival, it was clear that South Africa's second in charge meant business. Not even the cold weather was going to stop him from selling South Africa as the best investment destination in sub-Saharan Africa. The country's image took a battering because of the political uncertainty leading up to the ANC's elective conference. With that out of the way, Ramaphosa is determined to turn the economic fortunes of the country around.
In the audience were cabinet ministers, but we also had a number of investors from all over the world, some who have invested in the country and some who are thinking of investing in the country. And what they wanted to know is, where is South Africa going right now? And we informed them that South Africa is open for business. We are now on a path of renewal. We're on a path of uniting our people, uniting business, government, labor and communities on key issues that the country has to address, which is unemployment, inequality, as well as the question of poverty. And we were talking more about how we are reforming ourselves, dealing with the issues they have raised. Corruption was one of the key issues they raised, and we addressed that and told them that we're dealing with corruption. We also informed them that we are managing the transition process, where President Zuma is the president of the country and I'm president of the African National Congress. That is being managed, and is being managed well. And we also dealt with how we are going to promote further investments into the country.
The Deputy President found time to interact with some of the leaders, but it's not clear yet whether he will meet the man who recently upset the continent after it was reported that he made disparaging comments about the continent. Mzwande Lembeji, SABC News.
Breaking news, South African actor 68-year-old Sandy Mokoena has died. The star, best known for as Bra Eddie Khumalo in the ETV soapy Scandal, died this morning after being admitted to hospital earlier this week. No further information is available at this point in time. Well, former Gauteng Health MEC Kodani Mahlangu has denied that it was National Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi's decision to shut down NGOs in the province as details of dying mentally ill patients emerged. She also conceded that the fatal transfer project went against certain aspects of government's deinstitutionalization policies. On her second day of testimony, Mahlangu again shifted blame to her subordinates, Dr. Barney Selabano and Makgabo Manamela. Mahlangu could not say why Selabano and Manamela would lie to her when they told her everything was okay. She says she resigned because she realized that people she trusted lied and she could no longer justify working there. 143 mentally ill patients died after being transferred from Life Esidimeni to unlicensed NGO facilities. She is to face more questions on why she didn't stop the project and explain her role, which she has so far downplayed. In news abroad, the head of the Peace Agreement Monetary Mechanism for South Sudan has urged the UN Security Council to ensure that different leaders in the war-torn country fully appreciate the consequences of non-compliance to agreements they sign. The United States has called for Council to impose an arms embargo on the country.
The United Nations says violations to the agreement come from all sides, both government and opposition forces, while Mukhai slammed statements made by the Transitional Government of National Unity that he believes have the potential to undermine confidence in international peacekeeping efforts.
I am disappointed to note that within few weeks since its signing, the agreement has been violated by no less than 3 of the signatory parties. Since the 24th of December 2017, when the agreement came into effect, fighting and troop movements have been reported in the states of Unity, Jonglei, Upper Nile, and Central Equatoria, causing further displacement and disturbance of civilians.
Forum for heads of state from the IGAD grouping will convene at the upcoming AU summit in Ethiopia with a warning from the United States that the country was going backwards.
Rather than continue to hold endless meetings on a crisis that only becomes worse each month, I urge my fellow council members to support an arms embargo. This isn't punishment, nor is it a meaningless gesture. It is something we can do to actually help the people of South Sudan.
She warned that if progress was not made on long-term security and governance issues, that the Council should engage the region on a new path for peace in South Sudan. Shervin Briceby's SABC News, New York.
A new report on improving security for United Nations peacekeepers says the blue flag no longer offers natural protection. The recommendations were submitted this week by a team of experts led by retired Brazilian Lieutenant General.
195 personnel have been killed in acts of violence since 2013, with 56 deaths in 2017 alone, the highest number of fatalities in almost 25 years. Prompting the UN chief Antonio Guterres to call for the review of security in peacekeeping operations.
We also have to better understand our environment, what are the threats, to better anticipate them. We have to make sure that there is cohesion throughout the chain of command. We have good leadership, that we implement the mandate evenly, that we better protect ourselves in the first place.
Calls for a change in the mindset so that the deployed personnel are aware of the risks while being empowered to prevent or respond to attacks, improving the capacity of peacekeepers so that they are better equipped and trained to operate in high-threat environments. While the report also recommends that the UN start replacing officials, contingents and units that lack capacity to carry out their mandates.
Even to be more proactive. It was firm that peace enforcement would be left to forces or armies who fall outside of the UN's peacekeeping mandates. Shervin Briceby's SABC News, New York.
Former jazz legend Hugh Masekela had a huge following amongst Kenyan jazz lovers. He first held a concert in the country 20 years ago. Our Kenya correspondent Sarah Kimani spoke to creative entrepreneur David Moriti, the man who first brought Hugh to the East African region. He revealed that Masekela had plans to set up a huge heritage foundation for the East African region.
David Moraithi first saw Hugh Masekela perform in London. Little did he know that several years later, he would bring him to his motherland, this time as Hugh's promoter.
He always talked about fighting the inferiority complex of Africans. We as Africans, just stop being inferior and acting inferior, you know, and he was always really adamant about that.
He describes his talent as unmatchable.
Hugh had a sense of immortality around him. Nothing was too big for him. Nothing was too big a challenge.
His legacy will now live on in the region through the East African chapter of the Hugh Masekela heritage.
At the base of it all is about really using heritage and promoting African heritage.
On Tuesday, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta condoled with the family of Hugh, terming him as a friend. Kenyatta said Masekela's music was the music of a free Africa. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
Ugandan fans are also mourning jazz trumpeter Hugh Masekela. The legendary jazz maestro died on Tuesday after a protracted battle with prostate cancer. Well, through his music, Masekela touched the lives of many around the world. SABC's Hilary Asiecha reports.
The fading sounds of a jazz maestro. Hugh Masekela's trumpet has gone silent. The news of his passing has sparked outpouring tributes to his music. In Uganda, the jazz maestro sold out at all his concerts.
we should remember the good times they gave us, the progressive music he gave us, and of course, teaching us a few things about music, because at least he taught our musicians that you can always do music, regardless whether you sing it in English or another language, but you can always do music that can appeal to everyone.
The veteran jazz star last performed in Kampala in February 2017. While in Uganda, he shared a stage with Uganda's best jazz artists.
Yesterday I broke down and I cried because I thought I'd met a musician. Sorry, I'm getting emotional, but I thought I'd got a musician who is going to mentor me closer. But he was beyond that. This is someone who, at his level and at his age, he would call me brother.
Masekela, it was a very, it was an unforgettable moment where you're sharing a stage with your grandfather. It was amazing. The experience was really, really good, and I thank God that he made me to meet such a person in my life.
Among his greatest hits were the anthem, Bring Him Back Home, demanding Mandela's freedom from jail, and Grazing in the Grass. Hugh is also remembered for his anti-apartheid activism. Hugh Masekela's trumpet may be silent as of now, but among Ugandan fans, his music lives on. Hilara Isga, SABC News, Kampala.
Let's have a look at our social media commentary of the day. We'll start off with our picture of the day. This one comes from Christo Thurston. Hugh Masekela was 14 when he started playing the trumpet. The 78-year-old legend has made jazz beautiful. Thank you, and rest in peace, Hugh Masekela. Hashtag rest in peace, Hugh. Of course, we've also just heard the sentiments and the love that he's not only gotten here in South Africa, but in Kenya as well as in Uganda. Staying with Mr. Hugh Masekela, the comment of the day comes from TJ Armaketa, saying Hugh Masekela was not celebrated enough. Few people know that he is the only African with a #1 song on the Billboard Hot 100. Grazing in the Grass in 1968 is the name of that song, and it sold more than 4 million copies worldwide. He was a legend among legends. Hashtag RIP Hugh Masekela, definitely indeed. That's where we leave things now here on Newsroom, at least for now. Let's take a short break. Do stay tuned.
This is your midday report. Good afternoon.
I will be faithful.
I assume as President of the Republic of Kenya.
Let's take a look at how African markets and currencies are performing now.
The central bankers say the success of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is just a bubble.
Breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
Welcome back. Well, former acting CEO and group executive for generation at Eskom, Machela Koko, says he does not have any intention to resign from power utility. Well, this follows calls by the government to the new Eskom board to remove all officials facing corruption charges. Koko was testifying in the parliamentary inquiry into allegations of state capture at the power utility.
Koko was before Parliament's Eskom inquiry. He faced a grilling on his role in approving certain transactions, including the Gupta-linked Tegeta, as well as the controversy around Eskom awarding a 1 billion rand contract to a company part-owned by his stepdaughter. He says he will not settle for any fixed arrangement to get him out of his job. Of Koko's stepdaughter is unlikely to die down for now.
Of your stepdaughter, there are people who want to come forward, who are witnesses, who want to come forward and give evidence.
Meanwhile, Koko did not have it all easy from lawmakers. He faced a barrage of questions on his involvement in approving a 1.6 billion rand guarantee for Tegeta.
The 1.6 billion, the one that talks to prepayments and everything, is the one that you decided that this one I'm not going to prepare.
I did not prepare the details for
What
that.
did you prepare?
And it's quite simple because it was not used.
He also denied the Guptas paid for his stay in Dubai in January 2016, saying he and his family paid for themselves. He says Gupta emails purporting the Guptas paid for him must be verified.
Why was your booking done through Sahara?
I can tell you, I did not meet Chwala in Dubai. She did not book for me. We did the bookings. If you have a chance, and I think it's easily done, contact the hotel.
He believes the only reason he is before the Eskom inquiry is because he is trying to ensure black companies get more than half of Eskom's coal contracts. Bulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, SABC's Bulelani Philip has been following the Eskom inquiry blow by blow and joins us now from the parliamentary studio in Cape Town. Very good morning to Bulelani, of course. Take us through some of the highlights that the parliamentary inquiry into the affairs at Eskom has actually brought to light.
Well, good morning to you, Shante, and to the viewers. Basically, it's been a busy 2 days here in Parliament where both the former acting CEO, Machela Koko, as well as the now resigned CFO, Mr. Anuj Singh, gave testimonies in a marathon sitting both on Tuesday and Wednesday. Maybe if I can start with the testimony that was given by Mr. Machela Koko yesterday, as that clip has said, that one of the controversies around him was that he had been involved in the awarding of a 1 billion contract to a company part-owned by a daughter of his. And therefore, that matter had been taken to an independent disciplinary hearing under Eskom, and he just recently was cleared of those charges, and hence he was reinstated in his old job as the head of generation. So he's saying that given the fact that he has been cleared by that DC, and therefore there is no need for him to actually step aside as called for by the government over the weekend. He's saying that anybody who is against that disciplinary hearing finding should actually seek a legal review if they are not satisfied with that finding. And therefore, that's when he had actually insisted in a strongly worded letter through his lawyers to the Eskom board that he has got no intentions of resigning because there is no allegations of corruptions that he is facing. He's also said that, in that strongly worded letter, that it's quite shocking that the government is actually ignoring that he has got labor rights, has got constitutional rights, and therefore, if he needs to be removed, there must be due process that is followed. And therefore, he's saying that the call by both the government as well as the Finance Minister, Malusi Kikaba, for him to step down is actually reckless. And for him, from now on, is actually going to not accept any fixed arrangements to get him out of his job. When it regards to some of the transactions that he's been involved in on the McKinsey deal, basically saying that at the time when this deal was concluded, he was actually on suspension, and therefore no blame can be actually apportioned to him. On the issue of the Tegeta, the controversial 1.6 billion rand guarantee that was given to Tegeta, he's saying that actually, in fact, Tegeta had actually not taken up that particular guarantee and used it up. In fact, what they had done was that they had sourced funds from the Bank of Baroda, and therefore that guarantee actually did not put the company in jeopardy. But of course, the lawmakers have actually taken him to task that actually the money that was advanced by government to Eskom as a guarantee, the first tranche was actually 10 billion rand. Actually, the portion of 1.6 billion is the guarantee that Eskom got from government, and they now were extending it to a private entity. So therefore, they are saying that it was actually quite reckless of the power utility to actually use funds that were actually entitled to keep them afloat, but they were using it to guarantee another entity. And therefore, in that sense, he was saying that the Tegeta company actually did not use up that particular guarantee. But when it comes to the Gupta leaks, of course, he also faced a barrage of questions around whether he had actually met any Gupta brothers in Dubai on his visit in January 2016, an allegation that is actually denied. But of course, one of the committee members from the DA was saying that there are Gupta links or leaks, emails that are in the public domain that seem to suggest that his stay in Dubai was actually paid for by Sahara, which is a company owned by the Guptas. But Mr. Koko actually retorted that actually, in fact, he personally paid for himself and his family when he was abroad. And therefore, he was actually saying that the authenticity of these Gupta emails need to be verified before any credibility can be attached to them. Now, on Tuesday again, Shante, Mr. Anuj Singh was before the committee facing a 12-hour round of questions. And for him, actually, the main thing as well with him was that he had actually, as the financial director of the company, had to actually give a reasoning or some reasons as to how the company actually came about to actually give the Tegeta company a prepayment of about 600 million rand to actually buy coal, when in fact evidence has already been laid before the commission that the money that was actually advanced for the prepayment was in effect used to buy or used as a bridge payment to buy the struggling Optimum mine, which was owned by Glencore. And therefore the committee was questioning whether the timing of that prepayment, why does it suspiciously look like it was engineered to actually give Tegeta the head start to buy that company, because the meetings were set late at night. Documentations for those meetings was given at the 11th hour, and there was a sense of urgency in terms of convening those meetings as if it was to ensure that Tegeta gets that prepayment before the deadline that they had for 14 April in 2016. Given as well that, the conditions of that prepayment was that it was for the purchase of coal, but evidence again that has been put before the commission before suggests that Tegeta used that money to actually use it as a bridging finance for what was outstanding for the money that they needed to actually buy Optimum mine. On both occasions, both officials were actually asked as to why shouldn't they be resigning given the amount of bad publicity that has been given to Eskom. On one hand, Mr. Anuj Singh said that he had already resigned in the interest of the company, and he actually also took the opportunity, in as much as he was not admitting any wrongdoing, but he took the opportunity to apologize to both the committee as well as South Africans for any wrongdoing that he may have contributed to the downfall of Eskom. But then on the side of Mr. Koko, as I've said earlier, he said that, in fact, given that he has got no corruption allegations that are pending against him, he is not going to do that as instructed by the government.
Well, Elani, do you think that Mr. Anuj Singh was able to possibly convince parliamentarians that there is no state capture or rot in Eskom? Unfortunately, technology fails us. I'm going to ask that once again. Bulelani, if you can hear me, do you think in Anuj Singh's testimony that he was able to convince possibly or sway parliamentarians that there is no state capture or rot in Eskom?
Can you repeat that for me? I just caught the tail end of the question, Shante.
Do you think that in Mr. Anuj Singh's testimony within parliamentary inquiry that he was able to possibly sway parliamentarians that there is no rot or state capture within Eskom?
Look, I think judging from the comments that come from lawmakers, they were not persuaded to a point that, you could sense the frustration both from the evidence leader, Advocate Ntutuzelo Vanara, as well as some of the MPs, that he seemed to be evasive, and some of them were calling his testimony a farce. And to a point, the ANC MP Pravin Gordhan said he's taking the committee for a fool because most of the questions that were posed to him, he did either not remember the meetings that were referred to, or did not have a recollection of those meetings, or he just didn't have the prepared notes in front of him. That's why you get the sense from the committee that he was not a convincing witness before the committee.
Indeed. Thank you very much for giving us background info as to what has been taking place at the parliamentary inquiry. For SABC, Bulelani Philip. Well, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says that government realized it had to act quickly on Eskom when a preparatory meeting was held ahead of the World Economic Forum. Ramaphosa was speaking at the South African business dinner hosted by Brand South Africa on the sidelines of the WEF in Davos in Switzerland. To talk about the situation at Eskom, we're now joined by MD at EE Publishers and Energy Analyst, Mr. Chris Yellen. Very good morning to Chris. Compliments to the new year. Good to have you in studio.
Thank you for having me here.
Firstly, what do you make of the testimonies by Mr. Anuj Singh and Koko Mashela?
Look, both of them sort of followed the same format. Denials, deflection, it wasn't me, I can't remember, and it's somebody else. Raising a lot of, I think, extraneous issues, pointing of fingers to other people, and really stirring up dust and confusion in order to deflect attention from their own actions. For example, Mr. Koko kind of presented a narrative that there was a grand conspiracy by the media who had convinced all manner of parties, from the local and international banks, financial institutions, lenders, ratings agencies, through to the ANC top six, the deputy president, the finance minister, the chairman of Eskom, the new acting CEO of Eskom, 200 employees of Eskom senior managers, that all of these people were wrong and were painting him as doing something wrong, when in fact he paints himself as the innocent in all of this, in fact the savior, helping root out corruption. So there's a complete mismatch between Mr. Koko on the one side as an individual and a very broad range of people who are demanding his removal. And I just don't think that this narrative that he paints is credible. I think there is indeed reason for him to remove himself from Eskom in the interests of South Africa and in the interests of Eskom itself, as has been mentioned by the Deputy President and the government.
What do you then make of Anuj Singh resigning?
Well, I think the pressure has got to him. He felt the pressure and he responded to it. The situation of Mr. Koko is somewhat different. He's a very long-standing employee of Eskom. He's been there 25 years or so. He has a lot to lose by leaving Eskom, either resigning or being fired. And therefore, I think he is determined to stick it out. But we will see whether this mounting pressure becomes overwhelming and whether he finally steps down. He points to the fact that there are, in fact, no charges against him. He's been cleared of charges in a disciplinary hearing, but that disciplinary hearing has been widely condemned by people, by independent media who attended that disciplinary hearing as something of a charade. But he says there's no charges against him, and he's painting a picture that legally he's entitled to be there. He has rights as an employee in terms of the Labour Relations Act, and he's going to stick it out. But I think in the end, realpolitik comes to bear, and pressure becomes insurmountable. But we shall see how this plays out in the next few days. I'm sure there will be a resolution in one way or another in the next few days.
All right, let's talk Eskom's new board. What do you make of the board and the expertise that they bring or that they don't bring?
Well, I'm heartened that it is a board that has got a balance across, for example, business experience and expertise at a very high level, financial expertise, governmental expertise by people who've served South Africa in government for many years. I point to people like Nelisiwe Magubane, former DG at the Department of Energy, Dr. Rod Crompton, who was on the board of NERSA. And so we have a broad range of skills and capability, and that gives me heart that this is a new board. This is not Lynn Brown's appointment. This is not the old board. Remember, it was Lynn Brown that appointed Dr. Benin Gubani, Anoj Singh, Brian Malefi, Mr. Koko, the previous board that has been decimated through resignations, through links to Guptas. That was the old board. This is something completely new and different, and it's clearly the work of the new deputy president and the people that surrounds him and the treasury.
What would you classify as the current status at Eskom? Currently, they need 20 billion rand, and they still are struggling to find lenders to assist.
Yes, there is a severe liquidity crisis that has in fact been brought on by the qualified audit that was received by Eskom for its financials for the year ending 31st of March 2017. That's when 3 billion rands of unauthorized expenditure was flagged by the auditors, and that was the start of lenders holding back, refusing to roll over debt, difficulty by Eskom in doing bond issues both locally and abroad. And it's only accentuated as Eskom's financials, interim financials for the period ending 30th of September 2017 were delayed. They were supposed to come out at the latest 3 months after the financial year, and they're still not out. They have to get that in place. They have to be declared a going concern by the auditors in order to restore confidence of the financial community.
And of course, that then would be my next question. JSE, of course, is looming. What sort of impacts then does that have, missing the deadline for both the company and customers?
Well, I think it'll have very serious implications. As you say, the JSE has indicated that they will suspend trading of Eskom bonds on the JSE if this deadline is not met. And that is the pressure that is being brought to bear on Eskom, on government, on the deputy president, on the finance minister to really take action, and they have. And now it's time, to get the ducks in a line. To really demonstrate, as they are doing in Davos at this moment, that there is a new spirit and a new determination to ensure a good governance and root out maladministration and corruption at Eskom. So I think the process is right in the middle of it now. It's a very tense time, and I think certainly local banks will show their patriotism and come to the table. Their demands have been met for a new board, and I think it's now time that the financial community in South Africa gives Eskom a bit of leeway, extends some credit, some bridging finance to avoid this looming crisis of the end of January.
Just before we wrap it up, of course, it's D-Day for Brian Malefa. Of course, he is making his appearance, and his judgment will be handed down at 10 o'clock this morning. Which way do you think that it's going to go?
We can speculate, but I've learned over the years not to second-guess judgments because you think you no, but you don't. And we just have to wait and see what the judge says. And it's only an hour away, maybe half an hour now. So I really would like to stand back from speculating and just wait half an hour to see exactly what transpires. But of course, it will be an interesting judgment. If he is reinstated, it will really throw the cat amongst the pigeons in the new board because there has been a new acting CEO just recently appointed only a couple of days ago. And it will certainly throw the cat amongst the pigeons if he is reinstated.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much for joining us here this morning. Chris Yelland, MD at EE Publishers, as well as an energy analyst. Thank you very much for joining us here this morning.
Thank you.
Well, of course, former Gauteng Health MEC Qedani Mahlangu has denied that it was National Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi's decision to shut down NGOs in the province. Of course, let's cross over live as proceedings begin again this morning.
Policy is implemented. The implementation side, from A to Z, it is the sole responsibility and duty of the public servants who are employed, competent, with the appropriate skills.
With the benefit of hindsight, are there any things that you would do differently?
Yes.
It's the same question. I've just used different words.
Probably would have, yes, I would have done things differently.
Council.
So just to cap, and if you could answer this just with a yes or a no. You have no...
Excuse me, Council.
Just let me finish, please. You carry no personal blame in all of this. Is that right?
Council, once again, I cannot carry personal
Just
blame.
yes or no, ma'am.
I served in a public office and I assume the political responsibility, and I cannot carry personal blame because I was not working for my personal self.
So your answer is no, you don't carry.
I do not carry personal
Thank
blame.
you.
However, I carry the political blame simply because of the position I held at the time.
Yes, because you're the MEC, you get paid to do something, isn't that so?
Because I'm elected official, yes.
And you get paid to do that?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Because if you weren't paid to do something, the department could just report to the Premier. Isn't that so? So you have a function.
And my functions are defined by
just
legislation.
Just yes or no, ma'am. I'll ask you what your functions are.
My functions are defined by legislation, Council.
Yes. So you say you have a role to play?
As in defined by the legislation.
Yes. And your job is probably more than to present budgets that you have not prepared yourself.
Budgets are prepared by the Chief Financial Officer under the leadership of the HOD.
Yes. My question to you is, ma'am, please listen to the question. Your job is probably more than that.
Can you please elaborate?
More than what, Council?
Your job is probably more than to present budgets in the legislature that has been prepared by other people. Is that so?
The responsibility of any politician is defined in different legislation to oversee implementation of government policy and to ensure that things going according to plan. And if
so
they
the
don't,
answer is yes, ma'am.
And if they don't, then you work with the official to improve those things.
And your job is probably more than to appear before the Premier's budget meeting.
Yes, it includes engaging with stakeholders and going to public meetings.
Yes, and your job is probably also more than just receiving reports. Is that so?
Yes, to engage with the public.
And it would be fair to say that the Premier allocated to you the area of Gauteng Health.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And it would be fair to say that it is yours to implement policy and norms and standards.
Yes, to oversee those processes, yes.
No, what does the Act says? Section 25(1) of the National... Surely that's your only role as having been described, you would have looked at that section many times. And you've been referring to it now. What does it say?
I don't have it in front of me, Council. I'm sorry. Where's my...
I will read it to you. The relevant member of the Executive Council must ensure the implementation of national health policy norms and standards in his or her province. Surely you know of this article since you've been quoting the legislation for me all morning.
Yes, must ensure through justice. It doesn't mean that the MEC should run the department.
I'm not suggesting that. I would just want to know, why is it that you didn't know of that article?
From where did you read, Council? Sorry?
Section 25 of the National Health Act.
Thank you.
I'm not following you, Councillor. I'm lost, honestly.
Are you aware of the provisions of Section 25 of the National Health Care Act?
I'm aware of the provisions of different legislation about the role of politicians in respect
No, but the specific one which was read to you now, you are surely obviously
Yes, I am
aware.
aware. Yes, I am aware, Justice.
Okay, questions will follow then, premised on that provision. Council?
Thank you, Justice. Now, when I said to you that your role is to implement policy and national norms and standards, you took issue with the word implement. Are you still taking issue with that word?
Yes, implementation doesn't mean that personally I must do it.
Well, nobody suggested that, ma'am. Why are you taking issue with that word?
That's what you are implying, at Council.
How can I imply anything if I read to you what's in the Act? I think you're implying things, ma'am. So why are you taking issue with that word?
I'm saying my responsibility in line with the legislation is to ensure that government policy is implemented.
So you don't implement policy, you don't implement norms and standards?
I oversee the implementation of those policies and norms and standards.
So the wording of the Act have got no effect on you?
It does, absolutely.
Okay. Now, policy would probably depend on legislation. Would you agree?
Yes, it derived from legislation, some from white paper, some from green papers.
Yes. And also the general government policies, like white papers, for instance.
Yes,
a white paper is a very important thing in your job description. Would you not agree?
Yes, I did say that white paper, green paper, all of those policies.
And your implementation must also be informed by international law.
Absolutely.
And then we know about the Constitution, don't we?
Yes, we do.
And we know that you are also, in terms of Section 1 to 5 of the Constitution, must, together with the Premier, implement provincial legislation and implement national legislation. Do you agree?
Yes.
And you will also probably know about your ethical duties. Know about that?
Yes, I do.
The Executive Members Ethical Act.
Actually, I was part of the committee in Parliament when that legislation was drafted.
So that's binding on you as well?
Yes, I do know that.
And you, presumably, you are not paid to be an MEC to go and campaign for 3 months. Isn't that so?
Political work is part and parcel of what you are. It's part and parcel of our work. And being a politician, when it's a campaign or political work related for your respective party, all politicians go out and do their political work on the ground.
So you say we can pay you for 3 months to do MEC work in health while a marathon project gets people killed, and you can go for 3 months from May to July in 2016 and go and campaign.
Council, through you, Justice. Political work is part and parcel of what the elected work is done.
In 2 bits. The first bit is, did you go campaigning in May and July 2016?
Yes, we were preparing for local government elections.
The answer is yes. Very well, we've got that part. The second part is, why did you do it whilst the marathon project was underway? That's what Council has asked you. I've just broken it in 2 parts.
Justice, the department is run by the head of department. heads of department and all civil servants are not politicians. And there's a distinction in that, and the law is very clear on that. When politicians are out campaigning, doing political work of any kind, civil servants' responsibility is to continue to do their work. And that is really the answer. So whether the MEC is present or whether the minister is around or not, civil servants are paid as professionals to do the work that they're employed to do.
You sound convincing on the general. Council is asking you, why did you go away campaigning for 3 months when the marathon project was underway?
In between, I was doing government work at Council.
You see, you told the Umbud that your campaigning took you 3 months, May, June, and July.
Yes, I did say that. And,
yes,
and
that's true.
May I just add that? And I also further said to the ombuds that in between I'll do government work. If you notice, the day I went to Kalinin, it was in July, and the election were held on the 3rd of August. So in between, I did have meetings, and I'll go to the department. It's not absolutely correct that throughout the time I was not doing government work.
Can I read to you? This is LR 128. If you can have that.
Yes,
in
I
front
have read the transcript.
Yes, ma'am. Can I please refer you to LR 128? Page 12 of LR 128.
Thank you.
Do you see that?
Yes, I am.
Are you on page 12? On the left-hand side, there's numbering. Can you go to number 15 on the left-hand side? You say, so as in the...
You mean bottom, Council, or left-hand side?
Left-hand side, Judge, on page 12.
You mean 12 or 54?
Yes, that's the page, Judge. Line 15. Do you see the number 15 on the left-hand side of the page?
Yes, I'm there.
So, and it says so as to, and from May, June, July, to be exact, I was busy campaigning. I was not like in the department. Did you say that?
But Council, as I said...
Did you say that, ma'am?
Council, as I said through you, Justice, that, for instance, these sentences, some of them are incomplete. And I'd like to say on record, Justice, that the answer I've just given now, that yes, indeed, we're doing political work because it was local government election. But in between that, I was attending meeting and I was doing certain things. On the 1st of July, as I said in the previous cross-questioning, that I went to Kalinin in the evening to try and look at the concerns that were being raised.
Did you say this from June, May? Can I just finish, please? Did you say from May, June, July, to be exact, I was busy campaigning? Did you say that?
I said more than that, which is what I've just added now.
Yes, there are two parts to it. And again, you and Council have to go comma so we can get to the investigation, the inquiry, rather. The first part is the record accurate in what it reflects? That's the first part. Lawyers do that all the time. Is that correct? Then the next thing becomes, what is the explanation? Or what is the qualification, if any? So let's not collapse the two. First inquiry is, did you say that appears in the transcript?
In part, it is true, and I'd like to elaborate.
Yeah, that is fine. She'll get there. You will get that opportunity to elaborate.
But it's important, Justice, through you. It's important that in politics, the yes and no answer is not going to help me, because I am not used to be the yes or no answers. And if I'm being asked here to come here to present my evidence and I'm being confined to yes and no, it disarms me in order for me to explain, because there is a context into this, not only a context, but there is evidence that on a particular day during those elections, I would have gone out to go to the department to do departmental work, even if it was at night.
Well, there are two parts to it then. We can do it this way. First, did you say what appears there? We already have an answer, which is yes.
I said yes in part.
Two, is it all that you said?
I did say yes.
Did you qualify it then, or are you qualifying it now?
I qualified it then, and I'm still qualifying it now.
So before that hearing, you did say that you did qualify as you are qualifying the statement now?
Yes, Justice.
So the transcript is inaccurate?
There are errors in the transcript, and I've gone through it in a number of
So the transcript has failed to record your qualification?
Yes, Justice.
There's your answer, Counsel.
Thank you, Justice. The very next sentence, did you say the very next sentence? I was not like in the department.
I'm not sure what
you
you
don't
mean.
know whether you said that sentence or not.
But I'm still saying to you that there's errors in the recordings of this transcript.
Ms. Mhlanga, I understand what you're saying. Now, please understand what I'm asking. Did you say, I was not like in the department?
I was not doing departmental work on full-time basis.
Who told you to go and campaign?
It's my political responsibility as a politician.
Who told you to go and campaign during the Marathon Project?
In every election, all politicians are on the ground doing political work because I am not a civil servant.
Who told you to go and do political campaigning?
All MECs.
Let me just finish, please. While there's a Marathon Project and people dying, who told you to do that?
Through you, Justice, first of all, I did not know that people were dying. Secondly, we were doing political work, which happens throughout. And when it's election time, at a particular time, all politicians get involved, including the opposition, with doing political work. So there's nothing amiss or nothing wrong with me to having been on the ground doing political work. At the same time, continuing to work with the HOD to oversee what I was working in the department. I don't have to be physically there for me to understand what is going on because I'll talk to the HOD frequently.
Okay, my question has still not been answered. Who told you to go and do political campaigning during that period?
We have political parties, so each and every political party has its own structures and means of asking its...
And your structure, Ms. Mhlanga, who told you to go?
I'm a member of the African National Congress.
Who told you to go?
Counsel, by who told you to go, you mean who gave you permission?
Maybe I should ask it that way around. Did somebody give you permission or instruct you to go?
But I'm a politician, and I belong to a political party, and there are elections that are taking place. My responsibility, amongst others, including to serve the public in the responsibility that I've been assigned to, is to also do political work.
Yes. Ma'am, I'm not getting to the right answer. Did you just out of yourself decide, I will go there, there, and there? Or did somebody tell you to go and do a campaign?
It's our political party's responsibility.
You're not answering the question. I will leave it there.
Well, let me recast the question. Did you need anybody's permission to go and do political work? Did you have to ask the Premier, who's your immediate superior? Did you have to ask anybody? In other words, by what authority or leave did you go and do political work? Or is the answer you don't need anybody's permission? It's something that you are entitled to do?
Justice, as I was saying, that the reason why I was qualifying the statement is that as much as we were doing political work, every politician, ruling party and opposition, we continue to do government work alongside those the political activities that we're engaging in.
There's the answer, Counsel.
Justice, that might be an answer, but it's definitely not the answer to my question. But Ms. Mhlanga, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to just say that you were obstructive in not answering that question.
Of course, it will be open to you to argue that, and I'm here, I'm watching, demeanor, response, and preparedness to answer questions, all those are relevant in evaluating credibility.
Thank you,
You may
Justice.
proceed, Counsel.
Ms. Mshlangu, the cancellation of the Life Esidimeni contract, was that an executive decision?
Yes, with Monday. Remember, Council, on Monday, through you, Justice, I made a presentation on where the process started from 2014 onwards.
Ms. Mshlangu, believe me, I've listened to everything you said. I've read everything you said. My question to you is just a simple question. Was it an executive decision?
It was a Premier's Committee budget decision.
Sorry?
It was a PBC decision.
Would that be an executive decision?
Yes, it's an executive decision.
And in terms of
it's a subcommittee decision, a committee which has been, it's not the executive council, but it's a subcommittee that deals with budget matters.
And the decision that you're referring to that was taken by the Budget Commission, that was to cancel the Life Esidimeni contract.
Council, through you, Justice, the context I've given in answering this question that all government departments in Gauteng are asked to go and look for savings because the revenues had gone down and there were challenges with the economy and all of that. And therefore, go back and look for savings, not only on life. I have presented the different items of what the savings were going to come from in the respective services that the department was running.
Well, the question was whose decision? Was it the decision of the Premier's Budget Committee? That is...
But we've dealt with those issues, Justice, from Monday. That when I explained that the process starts at the PBC says if you look at the presentation, and I think it may be important for me to take the arbitration through the budget, the presentation we made in the budget process, and also the subsequent presentation, because it seems like the things we've said that are contained in the presentation are not being understood. Because it's very clear in the first presentation, Justice, which was made to the Budget Committee on the, excuse me, let me make a reference, on the 13th of November.
Ms. Mshlangu, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I will get there.
May I finish the point, please?
Yes, you're under cross-examination.
Yes,
so
may I just...
Council's primary role, an important role, is to ask and pose the questions. And we have to be guided by the questions that she poses. We can't have a generic discussion about everything.
Absolutely.
We must respond to specific issues. Now, if the answer requires a reference to a document, you have to indicate that in a way that is clear, that will...
Indeed, we will be coming back to the Life Esidimeni arbitration hearings, where currently a former health MEC in Gauteng, Qedani Mahlangu, is testifying and giving her testimony. Let's cross over to the Eskom judgment. It is being handed down now in the Pretoria High Court with regards to CEO Brian
investigation by the Office of the Public Protector into alleged improper and unethical conduct by the President and other state functionaries. The report contains damaging allegations against Mr. Molefe of abusing his position at Eskom to benefit the Gupta family in the improper and possibly corrupt awarding of state contracts and benefits to the Gupta family's businesses. On 11 November 2016, stung by the contents of the report and its possible implication to Eskom, Mr. Molefe announced in a televised press conference that he was leaving his employ at Eskom from 1st January 2017. He stated that he was doing so voluntarily, as that would be in the interest of good governance at Eskom to do so. He expressed his confidence in being able to demonstrate at an appropriate time that he had done nothing wrong. It transpired later that on the same day, Mr. Molefe submitted a request for early retirement. The request was granted in the letter dated 24th November 2016, and under it, an early retirement agreement was concluded with Eskom effective on 1st December 2016. The agreement permitted Mr. Molefe to proceed on retirement from age 50, with Eskom making up the shortfall regarding the 10-year service requirement in terms of the rules of the pension fund. The Minister was never informed that Mr. Molefe had applied for early retirement and that such an agreement had been concluded. Mr. Molefe joined the National Assembly as a Member of Parliament representing the African National Congress. Eskom duly advertised the position of Group Chief Executive. On 16 April 2017, the Sunday Times reported that Mr. Molefe had received a 30.1 million pension payout. Following the media outcry and the intervention of the Minister, the Eskom board resolved to rescind the early retirement agreement and entered into the reinstatement agreement with Mr. Molefe. The reinstatement agreement purports to revive Mr. Molefe's terminated contract for him to resume his duties at Eskom. The period he was a parliamentarian was to be regarded as unpaid leave, and Mr. Molefe was to repay to the Eskom Provident Fund all amounts paid to him. Mr. Molefe returned to his employment duties on 15 May 2016. The Minister addressed a letter to Eskom board directing the board to rescind its decision to reinstate Mr. Molefe on the basis that, I quote, the appropriate process was not followed in the appointment of Mr. Molefe, close quotation mark. Eskom subsequently informed Mr. Molefe on 2 June 2017 that the reinstatement agreement was rescinded. Mr. Molefe's case is that he never resigned, but instead applied for early retirement. The early retirement agreement was the only reason for his departure from Eskom. He states that there was a common misunderstanding between him and Eskom about his early retirement and pension payments, which rendered that agreement void, with the result that the status quo being his employment as Group Chief Executive Officer was restored by operation of the law. Consequently, he argues, the Minister neither made nor was she required to make any decision as to his appointment and reinstatement, and no question of a review arises. The type judgment will form part of the record. I will just read our findings. We have concluded that the decision by Eskom to approve Mr. Molefe's early retirement and to conclude the early retirement contract is ultra-virus and void for non-compliance with the 2016 Memorandum of Incorporation. On the question whether Mr. Molefe resigned, we concluded that Mr. Molefe terminated his employment relationship with Eskom either by agreement or resignation. The contention that Mr. Molefe's original contract of employment did not come to an end is contrived and is manifestly false. On the question whether the purported reinstatement agreement was lawful, we came to the conclusion that the reinstatement of Mr. Molefe as Group Chief Executive Officer at Eskom is at variance with the principle of legality and is invalid and falls to be set aside. We also found that Mr. Molefe was never entitled to receive any pension benefits from Eskom Pension Fund, and any payments made in lieu of such benefits were patently unlawful. In the result, the following order is made. A. The decision taken by the Board of Eskom in November 2016 to accept Mr. Molefe's early retirement proposal is reviewed and set aside. B. The decision made by the Minister to appoint and reinstate Mr. Molefe to the position of Group Chief Executive at Eskom is reviewed and set aside. C. It is declared that any payment or sum of money received by Mr. Molefe under any purported pension agreement between him and Eskom is invalid, and Mr. Molefe is ordered to repay such amounts within 10 days of this order. D. Mr. Molefe is ordered to pay the cost, including the costs of 2 counsel where so employed. That is the order I would make.
I agree.
I agree.
It is so ordered. Court adjourns.
Okay, how many people want copies?
We keep occupied, we make copies and then all distribute among everyone. I've got my lap.
Indeed, there we have it. Judgment has been handed down in the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria. Of course, a former CEO of Eskom, Brian Molefe, has been ordered to pay back a portion of the money with regards to the pension payout that he had received. The judge there declaring it null and void, as well as he has also been ordered to pay back legal costs. The amount of money that he has to pay with regards to pension is set to be paid within the next 10 days. And any other issues surrounding his reinstatement was also declared null and void by the judge. So there you have it. Judgment has been handed down. A former Eskom CEO, Brian Molefe, has been ordered to pay back that portion of the 30 million rand that he had said to have received with regards to his pension payout. There, the judge deeming it as a misunderstanding between Mr. Brian Molefe as well as the court and Eskom. And let's cross back now to live Esidimeni. Of course, the arbitration hearings in Parktown, Johannesburg are still taking place. Let's cross live.
Okay, Mami. I think there are 2 parts to what you've just said. The first is, do you feel that you've been prevented from explaining context?
I feel good I'm being constrained and I feel I'm being constrained. And secondly, that I'm being asked questions that are beyond my role as a politician.
No, there are 2 parts to it. We'll come to the kind of questions. But for starters, haven't you had ample opportunity to explain context every time you have asked to do so?
Yes, I've been given that opportunity, but from time to time I sense that when I try to explain, no, we don't need long answers. As a politician, yes or no answer, angiyazi justice. Angazi ngisebenza in an environment where I have to be, and it's my first time. Ukuthi ngize ngaphambi kwejaji ngizophendula onginama-lawyer. And okwesibili justice ukuthi ngize la ukuthi kufanele ukuthi mina ngizi-prepare on my own. Ngifunde ama-document on my own. Yet, I'm a representative womndeni, correctly so, banama-lawyer. And both those who have passed on, those who are still alive, and including the fact that if there is even a state attorney, mina angina muntu legally onginceda ukuthi manje fanele wenza nalokhu nalokhu, besides ukuthi fanele bangipreparele ama-document, and yiko kuphela into abayenzayo. So I feel myself ukuthi I'm disempowered, and I think I'm not able to really be the person that I am if I got the proper support through the legal team and have representatives sitting in this meeting with the authority.
Okay, Mami. As I said, there are 2 issues, right? On the first issue, it's a matter of judgment whether or not you are given adequate opportunity to explain. And I think I've been very patient to make sure you get the opportunity for context. And every time you need to explain, you have asked me and you continue to ask me. And that should not be a problem. But the second question, here it is a question of relevance. It's a legal consideration and a common sense consideration. One can't say everything all the time to a question that says, that possibly could be answered with a short answer. So the way we work, I could not possibly ask you whether there's a warm day and you say, yeah, neyizolo bekunje kanti nokuthanga bokuchisa and go on along that route. My duty is to make sure that your answers are relevant to the facts that we are trying to probe and establish. So I sit between you and counsel. Counsel may not ask you unfair questions and must give you a fair opportunity to answer. Every time she says yes or no, it doesn't mean you're necessarily bound to say yes or no, but it will help. It will get us to the point more precisely. So in short, I'm here to protect you as a witness, but to protect all parties and make sure that there's fairness in the ability to probe the facts and fairness for you to be able to answer. But that does not mean you could answer everything. Oh, it must be things which are relevant to the probe that we are having. And who judges that is the presiding, a trier of fact. An arbitrator, a judge, an umpire must decide whether or not the facts are relevant to the inquiry or not. So I really would like to plead with you, so too with counsel, to make sure that we make progress, i.e. listen to the question and provide an answer, and in the language that you choose. Indeed, you could switch to English anytime, isiZulu anytime. But it must remain relevant and something that will be able to advance the facts to be established in the arbitration. Is there anything else you want to say before I continue the examination?
Yes, Justice, I had raised the issue about my ability to prepare and read everything on my own without legal assistance, which has really hamstrung me, because as much as I try my best to read each and every document, it's impossible to remember all of them at the same time, because it's been a lot of information that I had to consume.
Yes, Mami, I couldn't about yonke into. So, having interpreter, when I speak in isiZulu, you must interpret for everybody else who doesn't speak isiZulu.
Yes, Justice.
Ngithi mama ayikho into yokuphoqelela ukuba uphendule yonke imibuzo if you can't remember.
There is nothing that compels you to answer all the questions if you cannot remember.
Your duty, when umele ukuba uphendule ukuba awukhumbuli.
You must respond by saying you do not remember, if that is the case.
And just being, unfortunately, counsel is limited by relevance like you. If the question is relevant, she's entitled to ask it, which means that you have to answer it. And if you don't know the answer, you say so. If you don't remember the answer, you say so. But there's no limit to the questions that counsel may ask, except that they must be relevant. And you must be given a fair opportunity to answer the question. What you may not do is to refuse to answer the question. You must have an answer, yes or no, or an explanation. I think I've done my best to talk about the law of evidence and how to lead evidence in an inquiry. Is there anything else you want to ask me before I turn to counsel?
Okay, maybe Justice, you'll deal with this later.
And you talk to me all the time. I'm here also for your interest.
Okay, thank you, Justice.
And to protect you.
We'll be crossing back to the live SABC arbitration hearings. Let's now cross live to the court where judgment has been handed down of former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe.
Doesn't instruct us that he was corrupt. So I can't give you much info. This is just come down on us like a ton of bricks. And as I say, it was a very strong bench, and you've got to respect that.
How is he doing? How is he feeling? Just if you can just...
Mr. Molefe is a very strong individual, and he's a family man, and he never complains to me, except when he gets his account for fees. But other than that, he's a very happy, content man. I can't tell you more.
Thanks.
All right.
Is everyone happy?
Yeah.
Can we just speak to solidarity quickly?
Can I go?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Where am I going to see this?
Very father. Everywhere, boo.
How fat am I looking?
We just got the cake. Barry, is he going to pay back the money? Or you're going to...
Do you want his telephone number?
Yeah.
I can give you his email and his number. Ask him.
Okay.
I don't have that kind of mandate to answer.
Okay, is everyone keen?
Can you look at him?
Yeah.
Even if you ask questions,
Okay. All right. Your reactions, obviously, this was a clean sweep for you, it seems.
Well, it's a 6-lap win for Solidarity, but not only for Solidarity, also for justice. Not only for justice, definitely also for the taxpayer. We welcome this specific judgment, but it is a pity that we had to come to court for this kind of case. It's a bad day for South Africa if high-ranking officials come to court to try to defend their unlawful action. It was clearly unlawful. We've seen in the judgment as well. He came here and tried to argue technical points to try to justify the specific unlawful action. Although this is a definite victory, this is not the end of the road. The fact of the matter is there was clear and lawful representations made. And that boils down to fraud. And fraud is a criminal activity. And we will definitely continue with the criminal case as well. The Director of Public Prosecution already indicated that the Hawks will investigate this specific case. They did that under oath. Solidarity will keep them to their oath, and we will, within the next 2 weeks, do representations to the Hawk to give substance to the criminal activities as well. So most probably, we will see Mr. Molefe in court again, but I think this time it will be on the first floor at the criminal court.
You've heard this lawyer saying that he wants to serve the nation. He's still interested in saving the state. What's your take on that?
He served himself, and that came out here. He used the instruments of the nation to enrich himself. There's no place for corrupt individuals that make themselves guilty of unlawful actions in the public sphere. And the taxpayers must come out much, much clearer. They must revolt against this kind of individuals so that we can clean that public environment, so that we can know that taxpayers' money is used in the right and proper way.
But is it just Mr. Molefe? I mean, do you feel that Eskom or Lynn Brown has a case to answer here?
It's much broader than Mr. Molefe. Mr. Molefe, of course, in the middle, in the center of the controversy. But if we continue the next phase, and if it comes down to specifically criminal activities as well, those misrepresentations was broader than only Mr. Molefe. That also implicates the top management of Eskom. It implicates the minister, although she at this stage say, no, I did not know anything. And unfortunately, it also implicates the pension fund. And that is why we've decided to go broader on the criminal side than only Mr. Molefe.
When you say you go broader, who are you going at? Some of the board members that were there at the time, your Ben Ngubane, Dr. Ben Ngubane, the likes?
The fact of the matter is there was a meeting. In that specific meeting, decisions was made, and that meeting's minutes shows there was misrepresentations made. And the fact of the matter is all that was involved in the meeting that made the decision to actually pay out that pension fund, that people all must come and explain themselves. But, unfortunately, the pension fund itself, also the board of the pension fund in court said that they did not what they were supposed to do, and therefore they must also bring to account.
We understand there's the inquiry in Parliament, and there's also the state of capture inquiry that is also going to look into these matters. Certainly, it was the reason that Brian Molefe, resigned to begin with. So don't you want to give these processes a chance first before going ahead with prosecution?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, the South African law does not work like that. An investigation on state capture is welcome. We support that in full. We have 7,000 members in Eskom that is awaiting for that specific investigation. We sit here with a court proceeding. We are quite glad about the fact that he must pay back. But neither the investigation nor this court proceeding nullified criminal proceedings. Fraud must be brought to court in a criminal way. And that is how South African law works. There's no way that any other investigation can nullify that. So, we had a prima facie case on criminal activities. The Director of Public Prosecutors said under oath in his papers, this court papers, that they will investigate. That actually said, oh yes, we have a prima facie case. That confirmed that. But the judgment of this morning paved the way quite clearly then to continue with that criminal activities. And it's not necessary to wait.
Can we just get you in Afrikaans? I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Just in Afrikaans, your reaction to the judgment and the fact that you want a criminal case, yeah?
Hierdie saak is 'n 6-0 oorwinning vir solidariteit, maar nie net vir solidariteit nie, maar ook vir die belastingbetaler en natuurlik ook geregtigheid. Ons verwelkom die uitspraak, maar ons glo ook dat ons was nie veronderstel om in die hof te wees nie. Hoë persone is nie veronderstel om hof toe te gaan om hulle in onregmatige aktiwiteite te probeer regverdig deur tegniese punte nie, en dit is wat hier gebeur het. Alhoewel hierdie 'n groot
lawyer of Mr. Brian Molefe, as well as the communications from Solidarity, as we're hearing there. Of course, they're saying that it's a good day for justice in South Africa as well as for taxpayers. At the same time, arguing that it is a sad day and that it had to come to court to get someone of this stature to defend and be in defense of the public there. So we've heard both the views there coming from briefly the lawyer of Mr. Brian Molefe, describing him as a family man. We're just going to have to wait and see what their initial reaction is going to be. And we have been hearing Solidarity and their view on the court judgment and what brought them up to this. And we do know that the Department of Justice then published the terms of the reference for the Commission of Inquiry into the alleged state capture. Let's have a look at the judgment that was handed down just past 10 a.m. this morning.
The decision taken by the Board of Eskom in November 2016 to accept Mr. Molefe's early retirement proposal is reviewed and set aside. B, the decision made by the Minister to appoint and reinstate Mr. Molefe to the position of Group Chief Executive at Eskom is reviewed and set aside. C, it is declared that any payment or sum of money received by Mr. Molefe under any purported pension agreement between him and Eskom is invalid, and Mr. Molefe is ordered to repay such amounts within 10 days of this order. D, Mr. Molefe is ordered to pay the cost, including the costs of 2 counsel where so employed. That is the order I would make.
I agree.
I agree.
It is so ordered.
The Bank of Baroda has reportedly agreed to share the bank details of the South African-based Gupta family. The bank has said the account records would actually provide evidence of a substantial contravention of the law. The Guptas have denied that the accounts were used for money laundering activities. Gupta-linked companies are facing allegations of state capture and misusing their close links with the President Zuma. Our Indian correspondent in India, Nahaya Punya, reports.
India's Bank of Baroda is at the center of a massive corruption probe in South Africa. After 4 major South African banks closed the accounts of the Gupta family following allegations of money laundering, the Bank of Baroda was the last bank in the country that continued to work with the family. Civil society organizations in South Africa have also accused the bank of being deeply involved in state capture, a charge that the bank denies. The Gupta brothers are accused of using 1.75 billion rand of mine rehabilitation funds in their Bank of Baroda accounts to repay personal loans. The Guptas have denied all wrongdoing. Now facing the possibility of having its bank license revoked, the bank has agreed to disclose the financial accounts of the Guptas. Experts in India say Bank of Baroda may have breached rules about having significant exposure to one or more clients, and that Bank of Baroda being a government-owned bank, the calls have increased for the Indian government to act against it.
So essentially a bank is as good as the trust that it holds. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. After all, it holds everything that you have as an asset in terms of money. And any bank which goes through a round of pressure in order to reveal something that's going wrong is definitely not fulfilling its trust duty, if I may. And this is one of the oldest banks of India.
Bank of Baroda has given the Gupta family and their associates until March 21st to launch legal action to keep their banking records secret, a period that is 30 days beyond the time stipulated as per the law. The Bank of Baroda has maintained the accounts of the Guptas in its South Africa branch since 2005. It saw 36 suspicious transactions worth 4.25 billion rand linked to the accounts of the Guptas between September 2016 and July 2017. Last year, Treasurer General of the ruling ANC party in South Africa, Zweli Mkhize, said they'd welcome any kind of investigation.
If there's any information suggesting corruption or irregularities, it needs to be investigated across the borders. It does not need to be restricted to South Africa.
South Africa's opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, has also accused the Guptas of using their accounts with the Bank of Baroda to funnel South African public money out of the country, a charge that will be in the limelight when and if the account details are disclosed. Neha Punia, SABC News, New Delhi.
Former Gauteng Health MEC Kodali Mahlangu has denied that it was National Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi's decision to shut down NGOs. Of course, it is day 3 of her testimony. Let's cross back live.
The answer I was giving earlier on about the roles and responsibilities in accordance to the schedule of the Constitution and the responsibilities thereof. And may I really beg to explain for 30 seconds that cancellation of contracts, be it an administrative issue, yes, the implication of that would be factored into our discussion and as to ensure that in clinics and all the services that are delivered, including in the NGOs, municipalities and councillors are aware of what would have been happening. So in that context, maybe we should it should have been discussed there so that councillors and the officials are aware that NGOs are doing working with this. But I think there's been that interaction with the respective municipalities.
You've given us an answer. You think, on second thought, it should have been discussed there. Council?
And one would have expected a politician of your seniority and having been an MEC of Health before would have realized this earlier, wouldn't we?
Well, I'm not sure about that and specifically, yeah.
Yeah, you want to be asked political questions. I'm asking you political questions now, MEC. Should you not have thought of that before today?
Maybe.
I would have said that the answer to that cannot be a maybe. That's just irresponsible, I will argue. What do you say to that? Are you going to answer the question?
And the question is, it is irresponsible.
The answer cannot be maybe. It is irresponsible to not have done this before.
That is the proposition put to you. It is put to you that it is irresponsible not to have thought about it and done it before.
Maybe yes, maybe no.
Okay. I will leave the answer at that, Justice, and I will argue on that. Was there a provincial consultative body as set out in Section 28 of the National Health Act?
Can you please repeat your question?
Yes. Have you established a provincial consultative body, as is your duty in Section 28 of the National Health Act?
I think it's called a stakeholder forum or something like that.
Do you have that?
Yes, it is. It does. It has been existing ever since I've been around.
Do you chair those meetings?
And I remember we had one meeting, we discussed NHI, and I can't remember what else was discussed in that meeting. It was, where was it? Yeah, I remember the meeting we held, and I think we discussed issues related to NHI.
So you remember one meeting of the provincial consultative body?
The meeting is supposed to be held once a year, if I'm not mistaken.
And you remember such meeting?
I think so. I can't recollect at this moment how many of those meetings were held.
Was the closure of Life Esidimeni ever discussed at
No,
these
it wasn't.
Should it not have been discussed
I
at
don't
these?
think so.
And why do you say so?
Because the council, I don't, at the time when we took the decision, and as I said, in respective, the answers I've been giving throughout, was that the work we were doing in respective to the transferal of the patients from the Life Esidimeni to the NGOs. It was an internal departmental work, and the officials, in my understanding, were working with a range of stakeholders, including an important stakeholder in this instance being with families, through the family committees that was established. So when you're dealing with the matters of just simply about concluding the contractual issues, and then the next phase will be, then you go to the stakeholder forum to say, how do you strengthen the community? But during the implementation, I think it will be inappropriate to start engaging and mobilizing stakeholders, yet it will be important to mobilize stakeholders once you completed that and say, how do we strengthen these services and ensure that every stakeholder in the community is involved?
Thank you, Mr.
So, in fact, you're saying it was not, you didn't think it was necessary to take it to the provincial consultative body?
Before the conclusion of all the processes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Mhlanga. I will interrogate you on that issue at a later stage when I speak about consultative processes. But your answer suffice for now is, as a senior politician, you didn't think you need to speak to them.
Before we concluded the processes.
Are you aware of the Minister of Health's presentation in Parliament on what he called the mental health patient strategy?
I heard about it.
It was in February 2017.
I wasn't around, so.
Yes. I want to just put to you one issue that he raises. I will deal with this document still extensively. But what he said in his speech, maybe I can take you there, is LR 84, LR 84. Have you got the document in front of you?
No, I don't have.
If we manage to
Which file?
Do you have the document LR84 in front of you?
Yeah.
The heading reads, Minister Aaron Motsoaledi address on Life Esidimeni mental health patient strategy in Parliament, and it's dated 23 February 2017. Do you see that?
Yes.
If you go down, there's numbers on your left-hand side on the first page. Do you see number 35 on your left-hand side?
Yes.
Do you see the paragraph starting just before that number at the national level?
Yeah.
Could you read that paragraph, please?
At the national level, we have a MINMEC, which is in the case of health, is called the National Health Council. Like all MINMECs, it consists of minister as chairperson and all MECs, HODs, yeah.
Yes, could you just read the next paragraph?
But in addition and different from other MINMECs, it also has a Surgeon General from the South African Military Health Services and representatives from SALGA. It is therefore a statutory body. When there are huge undertakings in health or elsewhere that may affect the health, the NHC sits and even go into into a recess to interrogate issues. It did so with the FIFA 2010. It did so before the president launched the huge ACT campaign to test the 15 million South Africans in 2010. It did so with Ebola in 2014.
Could you read the next paragraph, please?
I want to state here today that the issue moving of mental health patients in Gauteng, which clearly falls within the categories I have mentioned above, never came to the National Health Council to be dealt with like all other major events.
Is the minister correct to say that this should have been discussed at that meeting?
Well, I'm not sure exactly in what sense, because the agendas of MINMEC are determined by the minister.
Yes, but...
And the agendas of MINMECs then are discussed prior that by HODs and the Director General.
Okay,
and furthermore, may I really explain, the Director General convenes technical meetings of HODs, and as you've seen, the Director General and the HOD were working together in December 2015 relating to issues of life as settlement.
Okay, can I ask you this? If the minister wasn't aware of this, could you have placed it on the agenda?
The reason why I did not place the matter on the agenda, nor did the minister ask the matter to be placed on the agenda, because both of us at the time did not anticipate that there were going to be such consequences once the concert was cancelled. Simply, that is an honest and genuine answer.
Okay, I just want to know about you now. We'll get to the minister. You didn't think it necessary to place...
Because I had no reason to believe...
Let me just finish, please, Ms. Mhlanga. You didn't think it necessary to place the closure of Life Esidimeni before such an important statutory body?
First of all, as I continue to say that the issues, as I said in my primary presentation on Monday, that I had no reason to worry that information given to me was incorrect and the decision or the execution will result into the consequences that we are dealing with today. So as a result of that, I did not present the matter to the NHC. Yeah.
To which MEC now?
To the NHC.
Oh. So you didn't think it's necessary that somebody with a little more insight and perhaps somebody with a little more objectivity should interrogate your decision and the implementation thereof?
I'm not sure what you mean when you talk about with a little bit more insight.
Should somebody not have advised you on this?
But I'm saying to you, Council, the Director General, Precious Matsuso, and Banil Silibano, the HOD then, were working together in my understanding. So both of them are qualified medical practitioners.
Yes. My question to you is, MEC, there is a statutory body that the Minister of Health thinks is a relevant body to assist, and you didn't seek its assistance.
Because I was not aware of the problems which finally result into what we are dealing with today.
Okay, I'm going to take you just a little bit back. When the decision was taken, you didn't seek their counsel.
Excuse me?
When you took the decision, you didn't seek the statutory body's counsel.
But the cancellation of contracts in every province relating to the day-to-day operation of executive, that is not discussed in any political forum. That forum discusses policy matters. Normally, the typical agenda when I was sitting in those meetings at Justice, it will be issues of, what do you call this? The NHI implementation and progress report to that. It will be how clinics are being aligned across the country and all of that. It will be issues relating to NHLS, particularly because of the problems that and costing exercise that was being looked into and models to get NHLS to function properly. It will be the top priorities that the minister is concerned about in terms of making sure that the essentials relating to the running of the systems, those will be presented. And I can go on the agenda, but the agenda, it's a standard agenda more or less. From time to time, of course, during the Ebola, it will add an item on the Ebola, but the item is more or less standards that is reporting largely by national, and provinces are participating in that.
Of course, for my MEC, the big question in this question is, as you know, the minister thinks you ought to have brought this to the National Health Council. Do you share that view?
Justice, if I had the information I have now or then in September 2016, I would have had a discussion with the minister. Even on the morning when we had this discussion with the minister before our formal meeting, I said to him, he said, "Kretan, what is happening? I see this matter on the newspaper. And what's happening?" And I explained to him. And he said, "So what are you doing about it?" And I explained. Then he says, "I'll assist you." That's a discussion we had with the minister on this matter.
When was this?
That was on the 14th of September when we were before the meeting we had to discuss the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital.
But before we lose our way, because council dictates the line of questions, is the minister thinks you ought to have brought it to the National Health Council. Let's just wrap that up and move on. You obviously think differently, do you?
No, I don't think differently, but the context is this, Justice. If I had known, I had the facts that now have been revealed to the public, I would have. My understanding that I had a good relationship with the minister. I could raise issues with him upfront and telephonically every day. So I had no reason to hide any information from anybody.
Look at the examples in that paragraph you've just read. The minister thinks the council could be helpful in a futuristic way. In other words, it's not a place where you say, "Oops, what happened?" It's a place where you say, "Oh, this is how we ought to take precautions." You get his point. Look at the paragraph you've read. He thinks the council must be used to prevent Ebola, to anticipate the World Cup and the problems that might come around it, and so on and so on. So it's a body that ought to look at the future. And you saying to us, well, now that I know a mess up occurred, I should have taken it to the National Health Council.
Hindsight, Justice, is the best science. That when you reflect on matters that I should have, I could have, and it's already late. And I think it's important to really say that. And I said, if I had the facts that I have now, we could have done things differently. If I were to turn the clock, I will do things differently. And I think that is important.
If you knew the risks, you would have taken it to the National Health Council.
Yes, absolutely. And I would have also taken it to the Executive Council to ask for that this the administrative matter, which is likely to have the such risk, let it be discussed in the Executive Council. I would have done that.
Council.
Thank you, Justice. Part of political leadership is to consult widely. Do you agree?
Yes, indeed.
And you would agree with me on these instances that we've now dealt with? You did not even use the statutory structures to consult.
And there we have it, day 3 of the Life Esidimeni arbitration, a testimony from former Gauteng Health MEC Kodani Mahlangu. We will cross back to that in just a bit. For now, though, let's take a short break here on Newsroom. Headlines to follow.
Take an in-depth look of all your stories of the day across the world. Stay tuned to Primetime News every day from 18 hours.
Hello and welcome to Newsroom. We're coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. I'm Shante. In case I'm not alone, I'm joined in studio by Kendall Makamate, and a very happy birthday to Kendall.
Thank you very much. I've been getting lots of wishes today, so I really appreciate it. What are you?
Definitely. Let's have a look at our question of the day. Today we're asking you, what do you make of former acting CEO Macela Koko and former CFO Anoj Singh's testimonies at the hashtag Eskom inquiry? Continue to send us your comments on at SABC Newsroom. Let's have a look at the ones that have already come through. Johnny says, when Koko started testifying, he fooled me into thinking he's not corrupt. He's denied so many things. Last thing, he's going to deny his own name and surname. The evidence is so overwhelming against him.
Johnny has been following this very closely. Also, another person who's been following this closely is 24K Magic, apparently. Any mildly smart CFO manager would know what's happening in their watch. Fiduciary rules require full awareness. As it's laid down in legal terms, no one can actually claim don't know. Thank you,
No, we don't know. Well, also, let's have a look at our poll. Do you know who should be held accountable for the Life Esidimeni tragedy? We have 4 participants that we've asked you guys to tally in your poll.
Oh, yes, the former HOD, Dr. Banisile Bano, on 17%, and Ketane Matlangu, the MEC who's testifying today, on 55%, interesting enough.
Currently on the stand, and 12% for Dave Makura, Premier here in Gauteng. 16% of you say that Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the health minister, should be held responsible.
547 votes in already.
Yeah, you know, let's have a look at the tweets there. Alpheus says Mahlangu and the board are responsible. Motsoaledi must go testify first.
Alpha Male says all of them. I'm just disappointed with the Premier, as I thought he wasn't corrupt. Now I know this party is bad for South Africa. Alpha Male taking it even broader.
And our sports, Kendall?
Absolutely, our sports. We're literally talking about the Proteas, who are actually on day 2 of their test against India. And want to find out from you, do you think they can stick to their guns and whitewash India at the Wanderers?
Let's have a look at some of the tweets that have been coming in. This one comes in from John. They are capable of doing that, I guess. So far, so good.
Yes, Kimo Afrika. Nazim Khrutum says, yes, I smell a whitewash in this last test match. Thanks, Nazim, and thanks for the wishes a little earlier as well.
Yeah, definitely. And a good day to watch the cricket. The weather's good here.
Oh, yes, definitely.
All your news and sports coming up in just a bit. For now, though, let's have a look at your headlines. In news, just in, the High Court in Pretoria has set aside Brian Molefe's appointment as Eskom CEO and ordered him to repay his multi-million rand pension payout. The terms of reference for the Commission of Inquiry into alleged state capture will be published today by the Department of Justice. A former acting CEO and group executive for Generation at Eskom, Macela Koko, says he will not settle for any fixed arrangement to get him out of his job. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says government has been slow in dealing with problems at Eskom despite repeated warnings. And standing by with your sports is Kendall Makamate. Cricket, the highlight of the day, Kendall.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Cricket is the big story of the day, all at the Wanderers. And that's literally what we're going to do. We're going to bring you a quick dip in at the Wanderers to take a quick look at what's going on at that match between the Proteas and India. Now, we were going to do that, but you know what? They're on a break. And as you can see, they're busy just prepping in case it rains again. As you know, summer rains in Joburg sometimes have a habit of spoiling the cricket for everyone. Let's carry on with what else we've got for you in the world of sports. Good morning to you. This is what else we've got for you today.
And the #1 player in the world.
Simona Halep beats Angelique Kerber in an epic Australian Open semi-final to set up an intriguing winner-takes-it-all final against Caroline Wozniacki.
It's a match where you can close the gap or you can open the gap.
If you don't win, don't lose.
A humdinger of a PSL match looms this weekend with Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns set to lock horns at the FNB Stadium. More detail on these as well as other stories a little later. Stay with Shantae, she's got the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. Well, the verdict is in, and it is your top story this hour. Former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe has been ordered to pay back the 11 million rand that he had already received of his pension payout from Eskom. The High Court in Pretoria has set aside his earlier appointment as Group CEO of the power utility. He has 10 days to pay back the money.
The decision taken by the board of Eskom in November 2016 to accept Mr. Molefe's early retirement proposal is reviewed and set aside. B, the decision made by the minister to appoint and reinstate Mr. Molefe to the position of Group Chief Executive at Eskom is reviewed and set aside. C, it is declared that any payment or sum of money received by Mr. Molefe under any purported pension agreement between him and Eskom is invalid, and Mr. Molefe is ordered to repay such amounts within 10 days of this order. D, Mr. Molefe is ordered to pay the cost, including the costs of 2 counsel where so employed. That is the order I would make.
I agree.
I agree.
It is so ordered.
Well, trade union Solidarity has welcomed the judgment. However, CEO Dirk Herman says it's not over yet, as they will still continue with their criminal case against Brian Molefe.
Well, it's a 6-life win for Solidarity, but not only for Solidarity, also for justice. Not only for justice, definitely also for the taxpayer. We welcome this specific judgment, but it is a pity that we had to come to court for this kind of case. It's a bad day for South Africa if high-ranking officials come to court to try to defend their unlawful action. It was clearly unlawful. We've seen in the judgment as well. He came here and tried to argue technical points to try to justify the specific unlawful action. Although this is a definite victory, this is not the end of the road. The fact of the matter is there was clear and lawful representations made. And that boils down to fraud. And fraud is a criminal activity. And we will definitely continue with the criminal case as well. The Director of Public Prosecution already indicated that the Hawks will investigate this specific case. They did that under oath. Solidarity will keep them to their oath, and we will, within the next 2 weeks, do representations to the Hawk to give substance to the criminal activities as well. So most probably, we will see Mr. Molefe in court again, but I think this time it will be on the first floor at the criminal court.
You've heard this lawyer saying that he wants to serve the nation. He's still interested in saving the state. What's your take on that?
He served himself, and that came out here. He used the instruments of the nation to enrich himself. There's no place for corrupt individuals that make themselves guilty of unlawful actions in the public sphere. And the taxpayers must come out much, much clearer. They must revolt against this kind of individuals so that we can clean that public environment, so that we can know that taxpayers' money is used in the right and proper way.
But is it just Mr. Molefe? I mean, do you feel that Eskom or Lynn Brown has a case to answer here?
It's much broader than Mr. Molefe. Mr. Molefe, of course, in the middle, in the center of the controversy. But if we continue the next phase, and if it comes down to specifically criminal activities as well, those misrepresentations was broader than only Mr. Molefe. That also implicates the top management of Eskom. It implicates the minister, although she at this stage say, no, I did not know anything. And unfortunately, it also implicates the pension fund. And that is why we've decided to go broader on the criminal side than only Mr. Molefe.
When you say you go broader, who are you going at? Some of the board members that were there at the time, your Ben Ngubane, Dr. Ben Ngubane, the likes?
The fact of the matter is there was a meeting. In that specific meeting, decisions was made, and that meeting's minutes shows there was misrepresentations made. And the fact of the matter is all that was involved in the meeting that made the decision to actually pay out that pension fund, that people all must come and explain themselves. But, unfortunately, the pension fund itself, also the board of the pension fund in court said that they did not what they were supposed to do, and therefore they must also bring to account.
We understand there's the inquiry in Parliament, and there's also the state of capture inquiry that is also going to look into these matters. Certainly, it was the reason that Brian Molefe, resigned to begin with. So, don't you want to give these processes a chance first before going ahead with prosecution?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, the South African law does not work like that. An investigation on state capture is welcomed. We support that in full. We have 7,000 members in Eskom that is awaiting for that specific investigation. We sit here with a court proceeding. We are quite glad about the fact that he must pay back. But neither the investigation nor this court proceeding nullified criminal proceedings. Fraud must be brought to court in a criminal way. And that is how South African law works. There's no way that any other investigation can nullify that. So, we had a prima facie case on criminal activities. The Director of Public Prosecutors said under oath in his papers, this court papers, that they will investigate. That actually said, oh yes, we have a prima facie case. That confirmed that. But the judgment of this morning paved the way quite clearly then to continue with that criminal activities. And it's not necessary to wait.
SABC's Sibo Seeman is at the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to give us all the details from that judgment. A very good morning to you, Sibo. Firstly, just take us through the main elements of the judgment and the reactions.
Well, a very good morning to you once again, and our viewers at home. Indeed, a major blow for Brian Molefe here at the Pretoria North Gauteng High Court, being ordered to pay back up to 11 million rands. We understand that is already received from his disputed pension payout. The court ordering that he should pay this within 10 days. So there isn't a lot of time in terms of preparing and making sure that he pays back that payment. Of course, we know that he was supposed, according to Eskom, receive about 30 million rands, but obviously that decision has since been challenged here by the DA in solidarity, and it was found that that decision was unlawful and that Mr. Molefe was actually never entitled to any pensions from Eskom. The court also found that Mr. Molefe actually lied by suggesting that he had never resigned and simply took an early retirement. It says that that argument doesn't carry any weight, saying that when he left Eskom under the cloud of the Public Protector State of Capture report, that was his resignation, or form of resignation. That was his way of exit, saying that an agreement was reached that he would exit, and it means then that he had not been on retirement, but rather he had left his position. But also here, I do have the judgment here in hand with me. It's quite a heavy one, but they also mentioned in the judgment, the full bench was quite critical, stating that the allegations that Molefe is facing that are on that state of capture report by former public protector Tuma Tonzela are quite serious. The allegations about the improper relations with the Gupta family, the number of calls is allegedly made there, and the number of trips. And the court found that in the wake of these allegations in that report, and these allegations have not been cleared, that it would not be proper then for a person who has these matters hanging over their head to be reinstated in that position of Eskom CEO. Now, we also spoke to Brian Molefe's attorney who was here, Barry Faber, who said, well, The judgment, they're still reading the judgment and they will decide on a way forward. He couldn't tell as of right now. Obviously, they've just had the judgment. He called it a major legal blow for them and said that they will study and find a way forward. He described Brian Molefe as a strong man, a man who still wanted to serve the country. And he says that Brian Molefe felt that, he had contributed at Eskom and that he felt that he was entitled to the monies that he had been offered, that is the 30 million. He felt that, he turned things around at Eskom. We know that he's credited a lot with the taking away load shedding. So he felt on that basis, then he's entitled to a certain amount of money from his tenure, 16 months tenure at Eskom as the CEO there. However, of course, we will find out if it's going to continue. And this ruling will also affect the Labour Court challenge that Brian Molefe launched, because he did go to the Labour Court in Johannesburg to challenge his dismissal by Minister Lynn Brown, Public Enterprises Minister, who then, after the reappointment, then later on dismissed Brian Molefe, and then he went then to the Labour Court in Johannesburg to challenge that. But then the Labour Court could not take a decision, saying that there was still a matter that is pending in this court. And of course, we now know that this court says that his reappointment was unlawful. So it will be interesting to see then how that goes forward. But as things stand, he has to pay back about 11 million rands, and we also understand that his troubles are not over, because as you played in that clip there before coming to me, Solidarity is hell-bent on making sure that those that are wrong here in this Eskom debacle matter, in terms of awarding these 30 million rand pensions to Brian Molefe, need to come to book, and that the law must take its course. He said that the Hawks had assured Solidarity that they would be investigating Mr. Brian Molefe and his alleged pension payout of 30 million, and how it came about, who was involved in that decision, calling it fraud. So it seems that a tough legal road ahead for Mr. Brian Molefe. Whether he appeals or not, we don't know at this stage. However, even if he does appeal or it doesn't, he still has to answer to those charges that Solidarity, who brought this matter to court, wants to pursue. Solidarity says that, of course, it's in the interest of justice that those that have done wrong then must pay the price and possibly do jail time for their wrongdoings.
Sipo, what are those criminal charges that Solidarity has against or wants to bring forward for Mr. Brian Molefe?
Well, so Solidarity talks about fraud. They're saying that the decision, obviously, to award Brian Molefe this 30 million pension payout is one that the court has just declared to be unlawful. So they want to know how that decision, Eskom and all those managers and the board arrived at that decision. And you also have to consider the fact that Brian Molefe was on a 5-year fixed-term contract, meaning that he did not qualify to be part of the Eskom pension fund. However, somehow his information was sent through to the Eskom pension fund, and he was included. So how did that go about? Who gave the go-ahead for Brian Molefe to be included in the pension fund? Who misrepresented his information? Because the rules say that when one is on a fixed-term contract, they're not supposed to be part of that. And we also know that Eskom also then took a decision that even though he had served about 16 months there, that they would waive the remaining years of his contract, meaning then they were, and the fact that his wife, he just married a young wife, and so that meant that he would qualify for this 30 million rands payout. So there are a lot of questions to be looked at as how did they arrive at that decision, and hence they want the Hawks to investigate and put forward proper charges against Mr. Molefe himself and all those that assisted him. And they also mentioned that even though that is Solidarity who mentioned this, that even though the minister now later made a U-turn and said that she was not aware, Minister Lynn Brown, she was not aware of some of these arrangements that were made, and then subsequently dismissed Brian Molefe, that she also has some questions to answer, because she also played a role in this whole fiasco involving Eskom and Brian Molefe. You remember, it was a crazy few months. He resigned. Looking very teary and very emotional, saying that he's doing it for good corporate governance and that was in the best interest of Eskom. He then went to Parliament for a few months as an ANC MP, and then rumors surfaced that he was earmarked for the position of finance minister. However, that did not work out. Hence, then he tried to make a comeback at Eskom, a comeback which was obviously later overturned. So it's been quite a a chaotic situation involving him, and some clarity is needed. Hence, our solidarity are hell-bent on making sure that investigations continue and that he does not just end with Mr. Brian Molefe just paying that 11 million, but also justice must be seen to have taken place in terms of making sure that those that made the wrong decisions or made allegedly fraudulent decisions to pay that 30 million rands then should be brought to book.
Very much SABC's Sipho Steman on the judgment there of Mr. Brian Molefe having to pay back that portion of 11 million rand already paid out. Moving on, the South African actor, 68-year-old Sandy Mokoena, has died. He's best known for his role as Eddie Khumalo in the ETV soapy scandal. He died this morning after being admitted earlier to hospital this week. No further information has been admitted and available at this moment. Well, former Gauteng Health MEC Qedani Mahlangu has denied that it was National Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi's decision to shut down NGOs in the province. Let's cross back live to day 3 of the arbitration hearings in Parktown, Johannesburg.
With Dr. Mkhatshwa's evidence. So it's quite consistent. This graph is consistent with Dr. Mkhatshwa's evidence that the numbers were indeed reducing, and the 20% bed occupancy reduction was seeing less and less expenditure. And the question you can sense yourself coming, why not wait for a year or 2 or 3 and move into the accelerated marathon project?
But Justice, as I said in my different answers, that we did not anticipate that the outcome of the decision will be that. And I continue to say that the challenges that the department was faced with, and I'm talking was because of the past, were really, really genuine and real. So, as I said, when benefit is hindsight is always the best, helps you to think better as to what you could have done better. So that's my response.
Yeah, okay, I'll leave it there. I mean, that's what Council was asking about cost saving. I'm just saying, on the graph you have, I mean, the slide you've shown us.
Yes.
The bed reduction program was yielding results because you'd saved 90 million in the first year. Mr. Musinochi, Dr. Silibano, certainly Dr. Mkhatshwa, they all decried that acceleration that started around, that really went fast from May, and say that is what caused the stampede and the rushed displacement of patients into NGOs. And if this had been kept, lives would have been saved. What is your comment about that? Do you agree with that?
But Justice, no, I agree with you, and then I also want to give a context. Uti, as I've been continuously saying, when you are given information, you agree to this, the colleagues, the civil servants, they go and do the work, they come back, say, give impression that things are going okay. So you've got no reason to believe that the consequences will be this and the outcome will be the negative consequences we're dealing with today.
Yeah, but you and me are quite senior now, and we're looking with hindsight. Angitima.
Yes. I'm with you, I'm with you, Justice.
Yeah. And we quite senior. We're not, I mean, that's not a critical thing. I'm sitting and saying, what went wrong? Listen to the evidence. Dr. Mkhatshwa was emphatic. For instance, if there was no accelerated marathon project, costs would have been reduced gradually. And maybe you'd have even afforded to buy them out, he says in his evidence. And I look at the slide, which I hadn't seen until now. You had made a saving of nearly 90 million on actuals. So shouldn't there have been more patience and give it a year or 2 or 3?
In hindsight,
everybody
yes.
would have been saved, isn't it?
In hindsight, yes.
Jobs would have been saved, patients would have lived, and we wouldn't be here.
In hindsight, Justice, yes.
Council.
I'm just going to tie up this graph that you've now referred us to. Is that the only...
Is that a graph or a slide, Council? The last time I was at mathematics class, I think graphs looked a little different.
Maybe I need an interpreter, Justice.
Okay.
The cost in the document that you've just referred us to, was that the only cost that you looked at to make the decision as a cost-saving measure?
We looked at all aspects in the department. If you go to the presentation on Annex, I think it's not in this file.
Ms. Mhlanga, before we go to another document, let me just clarify what I'm asking you, and then if you feel it's necessary, we can go there. Insofar as life esidimeni is concerned, was that the figures that you were looking at?
Across the board, what we're supposed to save is 700 million rand.
Can I ask my question again? Insofar as life esidimeni, this table that the Justice has just referred you to, or you referred us to, were those the only figures that you have?
I'm not sure. I can.
Maybe if you could just stop fiddling and listen to my question, then you can get the...
No, I'm listening to you, Council. I am.
My question to you is a straightforward question. Please just look at me while I'm speaking to you.
Council, that is fine. That is fine. Look at me, stop fiddling, and so on. Let's give the witness a little break there. Okay, you asked the question. Her duty to answer the question. And some judge said not to look at you. Very well. Please ask the question. And
the question was, insofar as life esidimeni, were those in the table that you've just referred us, was that the only figure that you had in front of you?
I don't know at this moment whether there were any other figures. Okay. I just have to refresh my mind.
Thank you. Now, could I then ask you my initial question before you referred us to that table? Did you personally ask for a cost analysis to be done prior to taking the decision?
The officials in the Department of Health, they're very competent. I think we had a health economist in the CFO's office, so I don't know the actual thing. I think they would have done an exercise. I'll just have to get that information. So,
Ms. Mhlanga, please, I've asked this question many times, and somehow you're not answering it. My question to you is, you personally, did you ask for a cost analysis to be done?
Council, I've been out of the system at least close to a year now, and I do not have access to live information from the Department of Health, which will give me information now and this and this and that. If I had known the questions you were going to ask about those things specifically, I would have endeavored through my council to get that information before you so that I can answer you.
I thought the question for my MEC was, at the time of decision making, had you made a cost analysis other than what appears on the slide? I think that is the question.
Justice, I think it was done, but I'm saying as I'm sitting here now, I can't remember that document and exactly what, so, but I'm sure if the colleagues from health can, and I'm sure they'll find something like that, but I remember something of that kind, but I don't know exactly where is it, because I don't have, I'm not active live in the system.
I understand. You can't remember now, but you think most probably it had been done.
It should have been done, yes. Yeah. I think it was done.
That's your answer, Council.
Would you agree with me that you couldn't have made an informed decision without a proper cost analysis?
Yes, of course.
And as a political leader, you would have asked for that, would you not?
Yes, I would have.
And you would have looked at the figures, would you not?
Yes.
So we can accept that you've seen a cost analysis.
I'm saying to Council, if you look at the slide, I think it's page 62 on the cost saving, on the LR132, there it talks about inward-looking savings, outward-looking revenue funding, potential saving, risks, effect, effort versus impact. It talks about those things in all the items that were identified as part of the cost saving. So this short presentation would be informed by a thorough analysis that would have been done in the office of the CFO, because there you had a lot of competent people. Again, if you want the detail of that, I'm sure if I had known yesterday that you're going to ask this information, I would have gotten access to it and be able to answer you.
My question to you is more in the line of Life Esidimeni. Before you cancelled this contract, did somebody look and saying, it's cost us so much per patient, but now if we go there, it will, to Westkop, it will cost us so much, to employ the staff, it will cost us this much. Was that ever done?
I think so, but cancel again, I do not have that information before me, and I don't have access to those documents.
Okay. Now, as a responsible politician, and to give leadership, you would have looked at that if that was done.
Yes, I think I looked at it, but I do not have access for him. When I left Government Council, as a matter of fact, I handed over everything to government, because I no longer have a duty to be carrying government information. So if indeed I was still in government, I would have said to you, I'll probably go to look in my office and to look somewhere else. So that is really the truth. I do not have that information. But I remember something of that was, we had a discussion of with the HOD and the CFO around those issues.
So the Health Advance Institute's very expensive report saying Life Esidimeni is good money, good value for money?
I think that the high report was part and parcel of that work done by the health economics in the department under the leadership of the CFO.
So you would have had regard to that as well?
I think they took all of those issues into consideration. As I'm saying, the final product of the department, from what the high would have said, it will be including those issues.
You personally would have taken that into account?
But it can't be personal. Government decisions are not made by individuals. And I want to continue to make this point. There is no one person who sits and say, now we do this. If you look at the budget, the justice that I shared with you yesterday, the 184 million you're talking about, look at the numbers of signatures there. No, none of them is my signature. It's the chief director responsible for budget. It's the chief director responsible for this. It's the CFO, and it's the HOD and DDG, which is Dr. Libete. None of those signatures is mine, simply because of the hierarchy in government in making decisions. It cannot be correct that all the time, you. It can't be. That's a collective decision. Indeed, that's how government works.
So
and this is my true and honest answer to the justice.
Are you saying that you did not provide leadership and say to them, hey, are we now really taking a good value for money and changing it to something else?
We've had those discussions at Council.
Okay. Judges, I see that it's past our tea time.
It is tea time, but I think you do have an answer. The answer is, if I had access to my documents, I would have checked the known of the financial exercise, and two decisions are collective. I think that's the answer. We'll have to move on after tea. We're going to take the adjournment now, and we resume at 12 o'clock. We're adjourned.
And there we have it, day 3 of the Life Esidimeni arbitration hearings. Breaking for tea. They will resume at 12 o'clock. We're also going to be taking a small break here on Newsroom. Stay tuned.
For your weekly dose of art and entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Welcome to Media Monitor, the show that analyzes the big news stories that made headlines. We bring you robust discussions on stories that made headlines in the week, where we interact with media analysts to unpack these top stories. Join me every Sunday morning from 9 to 10 Central African Time as I bring you riveting news and analysis.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor every Sunday from 9 a.m.
Today on Rights and Recourse, we will unpack the new traditional court code.
The idea of the bill is not to overregulate, to basically set the principles.
The most important aspect of this bill is that it understands that customary law by its nature is consensual, that I have a right to affiliate, I have a right therefore to opt in, and I have a right to opt out.
The opt-out provision is basically one that you've got to respect the court in the sense of if you've been summoned, you've got to tell the clerk of the court at least that you're not willing to attend.
The challenge that I would like to throw to the Department of Justice, it has to come up with mechanisms of ensuring that people who exercise their right to opt out or to opt in are not in any way victimized.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Mates on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
Morning, welcome back. My name is Kendall Makamate. Time for a little bit of sports before we carry on with some of the heavy news you've been busy with today. We start off with the PSL, where Amazulu and Bloemfontein Celtic played out to a goalless draw in an absolute premiership match in Umlazi, south of Durban last night. Usutu remain in 13th place on the log with 19 points from 17 matches, while Siwelele are still 9th with 24 points from 18 matches.
Celtic are sitting on 23 points. They are 9th on the log standings.
Celtic came into this match looking for a win to take them into the top 8 bracket. Amazulu, on the other hand, were keen to distance themselves from the relegation zone. Benoni-born Lorenzo Codinho, who is on loan from Kaizer Chiefs, was marshalling Siwelele's defense. Chances were few and far between in the first half. Siyabonga Mbatha, who was between the sticks for Usutu, pulled a fine save to deny Celtic a first half goal. At half-time, it was still goalless. Early in the second half, Mbatha was called into action once again, and he was again equal to the task. The fans were also having fun on the stands. Amazulu were camping in Celtic's half in the dying minutes of the match. They put Siwelele under pressure, but they couldn't find the result they so desperately desired. In optional time, Amazulu exerted more pressure on Celtic, but Siyathemba Mnguni's effort went wide of goals. The final score, Amazulu 0, Celtic 0. Usutu will next travel to Polokwane City on Saturday, while on Sunday, Siwelele will be at home against Cape Town City, who won the Cape Town Derby last Saturday. Mtoto Zindlovu, SABC News.
Not to go too far away from what makes the heartbeats of a lot of South Africans, Kaizer Chiefs coach Steve Kompela believes Saturday's absolute premiership clash against bitter rivals Mamelodi Sundowns is a potential title decider. But Sundowns mentor Pitso Mosimane disagrees and says with 12 games remaining before the end of the season, there's still a long way to go. Amakosi will host the Brazilians at the FNB Stadium.
There's very little separating the two sides on the log so far this season. Chiefs trail log leader Sundowns by just 5 points, with both sides having played 18 games. Both sides will go into this encounter in high spirits, having won their last league fixtures this past weekend. But Amakosi should be slight favourites playing at home, having beaten Sundowns 2-1 at Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria last October.
It's a crucial match. One, it's a match where you can close the gap or you can open the gap. Sundowns are likely to open the gap, and we are likely to close the gap by 2 points. And it needs you to focus and go into the match with the understanding that it's a similar 11v11 match, but stakes are a bit higher.
However, Musimane says every match is different and hopes that his charges will give a good account of themselves as they maintain their #1 spot on the log.
There's still a long way to go. If you don't win, don't lose. So we'll try and win, but if you don't win, don't lose. We still have a long way to go.
Meanwhile, a delegation from FIFA and CAF will attend the match between Chiefs and Sundowns at the FNB Stadium on Saturday. The World Football Governing Body has pre-selected the two Soweto clubs, Chiefs and neighbors Orlando Pirates, to conduct a case study on how to run a successful club.
We are doing 2 case studies, one on each club, and we're going to be highlighting the professional aspects of both clubs. So nowadays, FIFA, through the new leadership of Gianni Infantino and our professional football department led by our head of the department, Mr. James Johnson, we've created a set of case studies that are aimed at promoting clubs, at sharing best practices, sharing knowledge amongst stakeholders.
During a week-long visit, FIFA will, amongst others, inspect the training facilities of both clubs, their match venues, and will also attend Saturday's pre-match meeting at FNB Stadium. Sfeso Ramara, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, Kagiso Rabada, the night watchman from day one of the third test against India, is still at the crease, showing his handiness with the bat. Having bowled India out for 187 on day one, the Proteas are eyeing a serious whitewash, and Amla at the crease alongside him. Rabada is certainly doing his bit for the cause. Let's dip in for a taste of the action out at the Wanderers, the bull ring at the Wanderers, to see what's going on there. Brought to you live by SABC.
.66 for 2, and that boundary that we saw brought up the 50-run partnership between Rabada and Amla.
What a milestone. And who's contributing? As my fellow commentator has given me a massive point to the right, Kagiso Rabada. And I must say, the way he's carried himself today, it looks as if he's enjoying his batting. There must be something coming out of the nets. Bit of confidence. And it's a serious indication that it's not all too difficult if you just apply yourself and maybe get through a few of the difficult times.
You're absolutely right. He's certainly enjoying it so much more in the second period where he's picked up those 3 boundaries. And again, this may be the result of Dale Bengenstein putting in that much more effort with the lower order. It's a glorious stroke. Hashim Amla gets into a beautiful position and helps himself to a crisp and sumptuous boundary.
Lunch is round the corner, and it was dished up there, wasn't it? There was an absolute starvation of bad balls, but he's dished up a lovely half volley, and then Hashim Amla has shown his class. I won't miss out. Let the pictures do the talking.
And that's what this pitch is all about. You've got the weight for the over-pitch delivery.
And all this after Andile Phehlukwayo was saying that Rabada's maybe not being so serious with his batting. Well, there he is, showing everybody that he can do it. And we've got a new all-rounder, South Africa. Now, the world's top 2 netball teams, New Zealand and Australia, are in awe at how South Africa has improved after the Proteas narrowly lost 54-50 to the Australian Diamonds in London on Sunday. And the New Zealand Silver Ferns know that there won't be any easy matches anymore, while the Proteas fancy their chances when they face the Kiwis right here in Johannesburg on Thursday. That's today. The world's top 3 teams, Australia, New Zealand and England, are in the country for the South African leg of the 2018 Quad Series, with Sunday's doubleheader already sold out.
Playing with the best in the world seems to have helped the South Africans improve their game. And Sunday's loss by a small margin against the world champions could not have come at a better time. Because while winning is not everything in the series, where improving their game is the goal, a win over New Zealand on home soil would be sweet for the Proteas.
Sort itself out when you're doing a great job on the court, and obviously we want to give this woman a win, and I hope it's tomorrow where we start. But yeah, we obviously want to work as a team and really improve every time we step on the court.
With this year's series being played ahead of the Commonwealth Games, tough competition is what's needed, with both the Silver Ferns and the Diamonds aware of the threat the Proteas pose.
It's such a great competition having 4 teams so close, and I was saying before that South Africa at the moment are a very dangerous side. They are very skillful, very fit, very athletic. They're playing some outstanding netball. They've come so far in such a short amount of time.
You know, when you come up against these girls, they've got nothing to lose and they're going to lay everything out there on court. We knew it was going to be a really tough game, which it was for us. So every time we meet, it's always a tough contest, and I think that's what makes this competition so fantastic.
The 4,500-seater Ellis Park Arena is sold out for Sunday's blockbuster, pitting New Zealand and Australia in the earlier match. The Proteas will take on England in the second match of the day, which will kick off at 2:30. Pesing Katlu, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, now to the story that's been doing the rounds entire week. Top seed Simona Halep of Romania will face second-seeded Dane Caroline Wozniacki in Saturday's women's singles final at the Australian Open tennis tournament in Melbourne. Halep beat former champion Angelique Kerber of Germany in an epic semi-final, while Wozniacki raced past Belgium's Elise Martens in the match early on.
Halep enjoyed a flying start, quickly racing to a 5-love lead in the first set before winning it 6-3 in just 25 minutes. It was much of the same at the beginning of the second, but the former world #1 Kerber dug very deep to take it 6-4.
The ship has been righted by the German.
In a titanic battle in the decider, both players enjoyed match points. Halep finally clinched it 9-7 in 2.5 hours to advance to her first final in Melbourne.
Yeah, what a terrific match.
Before the match, I knew that it's going to be very tough, and I saw that she's a very tough opponent. She's moving pretty well, and she's hitting from everywhere. So, yeah, I'm really glad that I could resist and I could win this match.
Earlier, Wozniacki also started with a bang, breaking the Mertens serve in the fourth game to take an early lead. It wasn't long before she wrapped up the first set 6-3 in just over half an hour.
Wozniacki on top of her game.
In the second, Wozniacki was serving for the match at 5-4, but Mertens fought back and even managed to set up a set point before the Dane finally sealed the deal in the tiebreak to reach her first Grand Slam final since the 2014 US Open.
Despite suffering the yips, Caroline Wozniacki prevails.
I was here in the semi-finals 2011, and I was serving for the match against Li Na, and I had a match point and I lost it, and that was definitely on my mind out there today. But, you know, I just tried to try and stay calm, and I was lucky to get a win.
There is much more to play for than just the title on Saturday. The winner of the clash will also be confirmed the world #1 on Monday. Liesel Sankel, SABC News.
Little known fact is that both Caroline Wozniacki and Simona Halep have reached world #1 on the WTA rankings without having won a single Grand Slam, and that's about to change this coming Saturday night. That's why we'll leave it with the sport up next. Azvita Duwani with the weather.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Well, we are in Port Elizabeth. It is currently cloudy and becoming more cloudier than it is currently, enhancing that chance of isolated showers along the coastal regions. And on our satellite image, we can see some clouds developing and happening just along the coastal regions, but moving towards the interior, KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, going to northwest and Gauteng, some parts of Limpopo. We're seeing more clouds in those regions, and possibilities of showers is expected in those areas, up to 60% chance of thunder showers over the northern parts and 60% over Mpumalanga going to KwaZulu-Natal. Along the coastal regions, just 30% chance of showers for today. Over the central interior, up to 80% chance of thunder showers. Northern parts of Mozambique, 2 severe thunderstorms, and over the interior of Madagascar. So please do have your umbrella with if you will be in most parts of Zambia, going to Angola as well. And over the northern parts of South Africa for tomorrow, we're still expecting up to 60% chance of thunder showers. So please do have your umbrella with with, going to Madagascar as well, going to Mozambique, Zambia, and most parts of DRC. Over the western parts of South Africa, we are expecting clear skies to partly cloudy skies. Severe thunderstorms today over Mpumalanga going to KwaZulu-Natal. So if you are in those regions, please be very careful. And if you see that build-up, please make sure that your car and yourselves are safe. Over Johannesburg today, sports day in the afternoon, we are expecting isolated to scattered thunder showers, a maximum of 28, and this rainfall will carry to the evenings, temperatures dropping to 22. 32 is expected in Bloemfontein, just partly cloudy skies, but as soon as you enter the interior of Free State, isolated to scattered thunder showers for today. Komani is sitting at a maximum of 24. 26 is expected over Cape Town, and clear skies forecast for today. Very hot conditions in Uppington at a maximum of 36. If you will, in Bulawayo, a maximum of 34. Partly cloudy skies going to the northern parts of Limpopo. Very hot conditions expected with Bait Bridge sitting at 38 degrees, 31 in Maputo, Windhoek at a maximum of 33. Madagascar isolated to scattered thunder showers expected. Mahajanga at a maximum of 30 degrees. Over the central interior, up to 80% chance of thunder showers and severe thunderstorms can be expected. Kigali will sit at a maximum of 28, making it possible for severe thunderstorms. Bangui at 38 in clear skies, Kinshasa at 33, 30 to 80% chance of thunder showers forecast for today. Over the northern parts, the Sahara, we're still seeing clear skies, but isolated just along the coastal regions going to the southern parts for today and for tomorrow. The Sahara Desert will remain clear. Few clouds can be seen on the skies. Massawa at 29 degrees and 25 for Sana'a. Addis Ababa sitting at a maximum of 24. Juba, very hot at a maximum of 38 degrees. Cold temperatures expected in Damascus and Cairo, and Tehran at a maximum of 15 degrees. That is all. Now, Yando.
Indeed, that brings a wrap-up of Newsroom this morning. 11 million rand that Brian Maleva has to pay back. Do you think that he's saved?
Is it 11 or 30? Has that been ascertained?
No, well, it's 11 that's already been paid out.
Right,
it was supposed to be 30, but 11 million rand, Kendall.
Yeah, look, you know what? He probably had it in a suitcase ready to do something with it. Now he can pay it back.
Alrighty, let's wrap things up there. We'll see you tomorrow again at 9 a.m. From myself, Shanta Yankees.
And me, Kendall Makamate.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Digamos.